Sleep matters. The awareness amnesia paradox. Imagine walking through a quiet forest. The trees are tall and ancient, their leaves whispering stories into the wind. Sunlight peeks through the branches, casting golden patches on the soft ground below. You are alone, yet completely at peace. With each step, the crunch of the fallen leaves beneath your feet feels like a rhythm, grounding you in the moment. But as you continue, something strange begins to happen. You start to notice that even though your eyes are open and your body is moving, you cannot recall the last few minutes of walking. It is as if your mind was awake, but not truly present, as if awareness had quietly stepped out of the room, leaving you in a state of perfect motion but with no memory of experience. This is where we begin to understand the awareness amnesia paradox. This paradox plays a quiet trick on the mind. It is the illusion of being fully conscious, while parts of your awareness silently drift away. You go through the motions of life, answering questions, smiling at strangers, completing tasks, all while a deeper part of you is not truly registering the experience. You think you are present. You believe you are alert. But later, when you try to recall what you saw, what you felt, or what you said, your memory stands empty. It is like walking through fog with your eyes open and still missing the view. Now picture this. A young woman sits in a classroom, pen in hand, eyes on the board. The teacher speaks, and she nods along, even takes notes. But when the bell rings and she looks at her page, she realizes she cannot recall a single word that was said. She was awake, but her awareness was not. Her body attended the class, but her mind had vanished into a quiet tunnel. This is the awareness amnesia paradox. It is when your awareness pretends to be here, but forgets to actually listen. It happens more often than we realize. On long drives, we forget the journey. In conversations, we remember the topic but not the words. At meals, we taste the food but cannot describe the flavor. The world becomes a moving picture that we pass through without letting it pass through us. And later, when we try to gather the memories, all we find is silence. We were there, and yet we were not. Why does this happen? Our minds are designed to protect us from overload. When life becomes too fast, too noisy, or too familiar, the brain begins to filter what it sees. It creates a version of autopilot where only the essentials are kept, and the rest is thrown away. Awareness becomes selective. It shows up for danger, for surprise, for deep emotion. But for the everyday moments, it quietly drifts, leaving us to function without fully feeling. This paradox creates a quiet crisis. We begin to lose the richness of life. The colors fade. The moments blur. Time speeds up, because the fewer memories we keep, the shorter our days seem. One day melts into another, and soon we feel like time has passed us by. We look back and struggle to remember the details that once mattered. The scent of morning coffee, the sound of a friend's laugh, the feeling of cool sheets at night. All gone, not because they never happened, but because we were never fully aware of them in the first place. But here is the twist. The awareness amnesia paradox is not permanent. It is a warning, not a sentence. It is a gentle whisper asking us to return, to notice the wind against our skin, to taste the food before it is swallowed, to truly listen when someone speaks, to anchor ourselves in the now so we do not lose it later. A man once sat on a park bench every evening after work. He watched the sunset while listening to music, believing he was relaxing. But months later he realized he could not recall a single sunset. The colors, the clouds, the feeling of the air. All of it was gone. His phone had stolen his eyes. His thoughts had stolen his attention. He had missed 100 beautiful evenings while believing he was present. So what can we do? The answer is simple. Begin with breath. Feel it come in and go out. It is the one rhythm that always exists in the present. When you breathe with awareness, the mind starts to return. Then, engage with your senses. Look, Really look at the world around you. Listen without planning your reply. Touch the textures of your life. Smell the air before the rain. Taste the pause between thoughts. These small acts break the spell of awareness amnesia. The paradox will still visit. That is its nature. But when it does, you will begin to notice. You will catch yourself drifting and gently return. Each time you do, you reclaim a moment from the fog. You light a candle in the dark hallways of memory. You stretch time by filling it with attention. And slowly, the days begin to feel full again. So as you lie in bed tonight, listening to this voice, ask yourself, where did your awareness go today? What moments slipped by without notice? What memories were never made because you were only half awake? Then breathe, softly and deeply. Let that breath bring you back, because this moment right now is real. It is whole. It is yours. And in claiming it, you break the paradox. You become fully here. The awareness amnesia paradox is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It shows you what you are missing so you can begin to find it again. One breath, one moment, one memory at a time. The peaceful discontent loop. Picture this. You are standing on a serene beach. The sky is painted in hues of soft gold and blue. The waves are gentle and rhythmic, and there is no sound but the lull of the tide and your own breath. Everything is perfect, peaceful. But somewhere in that stillness, a thought creeps in, a whisper of dissatisfaction. You should be feeling something more, something greater, something that tells you this moment matters. But it doesn't come, and that absence becomes a presence in itself. This is the peaceful discontent loop, a strange and silent paradox where everything outside is calm, but everything inside feels unsettled. Not in a stormy way, not in the way that screams for change, but in a quiet discontent, a sense that something is missing, even when nothing is wrong. Imagine living in a world where you have met all your needs. You have food, shelter, relationships, comfort, a sense of safety. There is no looming danger, no unmet desire gnawing at your chest. And yet, you find yourself pacing, checking your phone, switching from app to app, thinking of the next vacation, the next purchase, the next big thing. You are not chasing pleasure or escape. You are just trying to scratch an invisible itch. This loop thrives in modern life. It disguises itself in daily routines, in the long showers where your mind wanders, in the silent walks where a part of you wishes the silence would end, in the weekends that are supposed to relax you but somehow leave you more anxious than before. The peace outside becomes a mirror reflecting your inner restlessness. But why does this happen? Why does stillness make us feel uneasy? The answer lies in the human brain's craving for contrast. Emotion is often felt most strongly in contrast to what came before. A cold drink on a hot day, laughter after tears, a win after a string of losses. These contrasts bring clarity and sharpness to our experiences. But in the absence of contrast, everything begins to blur. Comfort becomes invisible. Joy fades into neutrality, and we start to feel numb, even in peace. The loop continues. We try to disrupt the silence with distractions. We check our phones, plan something, make changes. But the moment the activity ends, the silence returns. The discontent whispers again. We assume something is wrong with our environment, so we move, rearrange, replace, but nothing changes, because the loop is not external, it is internal. There is also a deeper layer, one rooted in the subconscious belief that we are only valuable when we are striving, doing, fixing, achieving. If we are not pushing forward, we are falling behind. Even moments of rest begin to feel like failures. This creates a tension between the body that wants to relax and the mind that feels guilty for doing nothing. So even when we stop, we don't really stop. Our thoughts race, our fingers twitch, Our eyes scan for something new. To escape the peaceful discontent loop, we must learn to sit with it. To stop treating restlessness as a problem. To see it as a signal, not a flaw. It is okay to feel unsettled in stillness. It does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. Practicing awareness without judgment is the first step. When you notice that creeping discontent, name it. Say to yourself, this is the loop. Observe it, breathe through it. Do not try to fix it. Just notice how it moves, what it triggers, what it makes you want to do. And then gently bring your focus to what is real in the moment, the texture of the fabric you're sitting on, the sound of your breath, the way your heart beats without your asking. These small details are not exciting, but they are grounding. They remind you that being alive is enough, even when it does not feel dramatic. Another path is to embrace intentional contrast. Create space for new experiences that are not about distraction, but about presence. Try something you have never done before. Change your routine slightly. These shifts are not to escape the loop, but to bring attention back to life, to remind your brain that you are still here, still moving, still discovering. Let go of the pressure to be at peace all the time. True peace is not the absence of discontent. It is the ability to hold space for both calm and discomfort without needing to choose between them. It is the art of being okay with not always being okay. The peaceful discontent loop is not your enemy. It is a mirror, one that reflects your depth, your layers, your hunger for meaning. Instead of fighting it, sit beside it. Listen to what it says. Not with urgency, but with curiosity. As you rest tonight, remember this. The silence you feel is not emptiness. It is space. Space for reflection. Space for growth. Space for simply being. You are not lost. You are unfolding. And that, in itself, is beautiful. The identity without memory puzzle. Imagine waking up in a quiet white room, the kind that hums softly with fluorescent lights and smells faintly like clean sheets. You open your eyes slowly. Your hands move. You can feel your breath. You are here. But something is wrong. You do not know where here is. You do not know who you are. Not your name, not your story, not even the sound of your own voice. A nurse walks in and smiles. She calls you by a name that sounds strange in your ears. She says you were found unconscious. No identification, no phone, just your body and your breath. You try to speak. The words come, but they feel borrowed, like trying to walk in someone else's shoes. Something inside you says, this is not right. But you have no proof, no memory, no reason to doubt her. Only a hollow space where certainty used to live. You look in the mirror. The face looking back is unfamiliar. But the eyes carry something. Not a memory, not an image. More like a silent question. Who is this? This is the identity without memory puzzle. A strange paradox where you lose every piece of your personal history but still feel like someone. There is no name, no origin, no favorite food or childhood memory. But there is still presence. There is still awareness. You know you are here, even if you do not know who you are. It is easy to believe that identity is made from memory, that we are nothing more than a collection of experiences, birthdays, heartbreaks, places we have lived, people we have loved. But this puzzle asks something deeper. If all of those things vanished in an instant, would you also disappear? Or would some quiet version of you remain? You are not remembering. You are not thinking about the past, but you are feeling, you are observing, you are reacting. You are making choices, even small ones, like looking out the window or sitting in silence. These choices come from somewhere, not from a memory, but from something even more fundamental. Maybe identity is not built. Maybe it is revealed. Picture a child who has never spoken, never been taught language, yet they still smile. They still cry when hurt. They still reach for warmth and pull away from pain. There is no memory guiding them. Just instinct, just presence, just a being that wants to connect. You might not call it identity in the traditional sense, but it is undeniably a self. Now imagine walking through life without memory. You step into a park. You feel the breeze. A dog runs past you, chasing a ball. You smile. You sit on a bench beside a stranger and listen to them talk. You do not remember the past, but something inside you still feels, still chooses kindness, still seeks comfort. This quiet self, the one beneath all the stories, still knows how to live. The puzzle becomes even more mysterious when someone tells you who you were. They show you photos, videos, letters you wrote. They try to return your past to you. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it feels like a story you are watching rather than living. You play the role. You repeat the words. But it feels distant, like acting out someone else's life. Then comes the question. If the memory never returns, are you still that person? Or are you someone new? And if you are someone new, what happened to the person you were? Maybe there is no solid self. Maybe identity is more like a river, flowing, changing, never exactly the same. Memories are like stones in the river, shaping the way it moves but never stopping it from flowing. Take away the stones, and the river still moves. It still reaches the sea. This realization can be both unsettling and freeing. If identity does not depend on memory, then you are more than your past. You are more than your pain, more than your regrets. You are not trapped by who you were. You are always becoming. This does not mean memory is meaningless. It gives us texture, color, a sense of direction, but it is not the source. It is the map, not the land, the photograph, not the person. So who are you, really? You are the one watching, the one breathing, the one asking the question. You are not the stories you remember. You are the quiet space where stories rise and fall. You are the awareness that stays even when everything else fades. Somewhere in that quiet white room, as you sit and watch the light change through the window, you start to smile. You still do not know your name. You still do not remember your past. But the moment feels full. You are not empty. You are not lost. You are here. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is the answer the puzzle was hiding. Not a name, not a timeline. Just presence. Just being. The knowing without knowing trap. Picture this. You are walking through a dense forest at dawn. The ground is soft beneath your feet, the air still cold from the night. You have no map, no compass. You do not know how you got here. And yet, something inside you tells you where to step, which way to turn. You do not think, you just move, as if something deep within you already knows the way. There is no voice guiding you, no memory of paths walked before. But your body follows a rhythm. Your eyes catch details you cannot explain. A certain bend in the trees feels familiar. A quiet hill in the distance draws you in. You keep walking, feeling strangely certain without knowing why. You cannot explain it, but it feels right. This is the knowing without knowing trap. It is the strange experience of sensing something deeply without being able to explain it. It happens more often than we realize. We make choices that feel guided. We say things that feel true. We meet someone and feel like we have known them for years. But when we try to explain how or why, we come up empty. There is no logic, no facts, just a quiet inner certainty. This is where the trap begins. The mind wants to understand. It wants reasons, proof, stories that make sense. But this kind of knowing comes without explanation. And the more we chase clarity, the more it slips away. Think about moments when you have a strong feeling about something before it happens. You cannot prove it. You cannot trace its source. But you feel it. Like when you know someone is going to call you before your phone rings. Or when you sense that something is off in a situation that looks perfectly fine. These moments are not always loud. They do not shout. They whisper. And we often ignore them, because they do not follow the rules of thinking. But what if this silent knowing is just as real as the knowledge we can explain? The trap appears when we begin to doubt ourselves. When we try to fit this kind of knowing into boxes it was never meant to enter. When we pressure ourselves to explain the unexplainable, we start to feel lost. We begin to believe we are wrong or irrational, that our feelings are just noise, and slowly we stop listening. This is the awareness-amnesia paradox in action. We are aware, we sense, we feel. But then we forget that we ever did. We forget the quiet truth that was once so clear. And we return to the noise of doubt. But not all knowing begins with the mind. Some knowing comes from somewhere deeper, from silence, from stillness, from something ancient that cannot be described. Imagine a child who touches fire for the first time. They do not understand heat. They have no theory about pain. But after that moment, they know, not from logic, but from experience, that knowing lives in the body, not in words. Or think about someone who plays music by ear. They cannot read notes. They cannot explain scales. But they can play melodies that touch the heart. Their fingers move before the mind catches up. They know, without knowing, how they know. This type of knowledge is quiet but powerful. It does not argue. It does not demand. It simply exists. Like a gentle river beneath the surface, guiding the current even when the surface appears still. But here comes the tricky part. Because this knowing does not speak the language of thought, it can be mistaken for a feeling, and feelings, we are told, are unreliable. So we begin to question, to test, to push against it. We ask for proof, for logic, for clear paths, and when we do not find them, we dismiss the knowing entirely. We walk in circles, forgetting that we once knew the way. The knowing without knowing trap is not about superstition. It is not about guessing. It is about a kind of awareness that sits below thought, a felt sense of truth that comes before the story forms. It does not always lead to action. Sometimes it just makes you pause. Sometimes it just makes you look again. You might not understand why you feel drawn to a certain place, or a person, or an idea, but something in you leans toward it. That leaning is not random. It is a thread, a signal, a quiet invitation, and the paradox is, when you trust it, life often opens up. You meet the right people. You find yourself in the right place. But if you try to explain it afterward, you cannot. The mind was not driving. It was observing. So what do you do with this kind of knowing? You listen. You learn to sit with the mystery. You stop demanding answers from things that were never meant to be solved. You let yourself trust the river even when you cannot see the shore. You understand that awareness does not always come with memory. That understanding does not always come with explanation. That you can be right even when you do not know why. This is not blind faith. It is quiet presence. It is the choice to feel, to notice, to move without needing to label every step. It is about remembering what your body already knows, what your silence has always whispered, what your breath tells you every time you pause long enough to listen. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. You do not need to know the reason. You just need to know that you are here, and that something in you already knows the way. The Stillness in Motion Riddle. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a long, winding road. It stretches far into the distance, lined with tall trees swaying gently in the breeze. You take your first step forward. The gravel crunches beneath your feet. Birds fly overhead. The sun rises slowly behind you, casting long shadows ahead. You are walking. You are moving. Yet, inside you, something feels perfectly still. You keep going, passing hills, skipping stones across a quiet stream. Each movement seems to take you further away from where you began. But strangely, there is no sense of departure. It feels as if you have not gone anywhere at all, like the center of you never moved, as if some part of you stayed seated in a silent space, untouched by the journey. This is the Stillness in Motion Riddle. It is a paradox that reveals itself in the quiet moments of everyday life. You are doing things, you are going places, but deep inside, there is a calm that does not move, a part of you that stays rooted, no matter how fast the world spins around you. Think of the moments when you are traveling in a train. The landscape rushes past, trees blur, cities come and go, but you are seated by the window, still and quiet. Your body is being carried forward, but your mind drifts in slow motion. You think, you feel, you remember. And in that space, it feels like time has paused, as if life is moving, but you are not. This riddle is not just about travel. It is about how we live. We chase goals. We run after dreams. We get busy. We get tired. And we keep going. Yet, when we pause and look within, we often find that something inside has not changed. It is still watching, still aware, still here. That stillness is not the opposite of motion. It exists inside it, hidden within every step, every breath, every heartbeat. You are constantly changing, and yet some part of you remains untouched. Like the eye in the center of a storm, quiet and clear while the world spins around it. The awareness-amnesia paradox plays a role here, because we often forget this inner stillness. We are so involved in doing, in becoming, in reaching, that we forget we are already being. We forget that while everything outside moves, our inner witness does not. You may find yourself rushing through a busy street, horns blaring, people talking, lights flashing. But if you close your eyes for a moment, even while walking, you may notice something surprising, a silence behind the noise, a stillness behind the movement. It has always been there. We just do not pay attention to it. Children feel this often. They run and play, but they are fully present. Their motion is pure, untouched by thought. They move, but they do not drift away from themselves. As we grow, we move faster, but often forget to remain centered. We begin to think that the more we move, the more progress we make. But the riddle asks, what if real progress is found in staying still within? This stillness is not laziness. It is not passivity. It is clarity. It is the knowing that even as life changes, you are grounded. You are aware. You are more than the tasks, more than the speed, more than the journey. You are the space in which all of it happens. Imagine a dancer spinning on stage. From the outside, it looks like constant motion, twists, turns, leaps. But ask any skilled dancer, and they will tell you there is a point in the center of the body they must stay connected to, a point that does not move. If they lose it, the dance falls apart. That center is what holds the movement together. It is stillness within motion. Or picture a musician playing a fast piece on the piano. Notes fly by like rain. The hands move quickly, but the mind is still focused, calm, aware of every beat, every pause, every breath. That inner stillness is what allows the beauty to come through. In the same way, your life may be full of motion, work, noise, emotions, change. But if you can find that quiet space within, everything begins to feel lighter. You do not need to stop moving. You just need to stop forgetting. The stillness and motion riddle is not about solving something. It is about noticing, becoming aware of the presence that is always with you, the awareness that is not shaken by change, the calm that sits behind your eyes even when you are crying, the peace that remains while everything else shifts. Sometimes we wait for life to slow down so we can feel peace, but maybe peace is not after the motion. Maybe it is inside it. Maybe the running, the working, the trying are all happening inside a greater silence that we have simply forgotten to hear. So the next time you are rushing somewhere, stop for just a moment. Not with your body, but with your mind. Ask yourself, who is moving? Who is watching? And in that question, you may feel it. The stillness, quiet, strong, always present. It is not about doing less. It is about being more aware of what does not move while you do. You are not just the motion. You are the space that holds it. You are not just the story. You are the silence between the lines. And that stillness is not separate from your journey. It is what makes the journey possible. The desireless desire. Imagine a person sitting alone on a hilltop just before sunrise. The sky is still dark, but the air is filled with quiet hope. They are not searching for anything in particular. They are not thinking about success or failure. They are just there, breathing, watching, feeling the silence slowly warm with the promise of light. And in that stillness, something strange happens. A deep peace flows through them, a calm that is not empty but full, not loud but powerful. They are not craving anything, yet something in them begins to glow. A gentle sense of longing, not for anything outside, but for something that already feels present. It is not the desire to own, or chase, or change. It is the desire to simply stay in that stillness, to remain in that moment forever. A desire without an object, a flame without heat, a longing that does not ache. This is the desireless desire. At first, it sounds like a contradiction. Desire is usually connected with wanting something, a goal, a person, an outcome. But this kind of desire is different. It is not about running after something outside yourself. It is about sensing something already within you and simply wishing to rest there. It is the quiet pull toward presence, toward awareness, toward the part of you that needs nothing but still feels deeply alive. Most of the time, our desires come with stories. We want a better life, a better body, more money, more love, more meaning. We feel a lack, and we chase something to fill it. That chase keeps us moving. It fills our days with effort, with hope, with restlessness. But behind all those desires, there is another space, a quieter one. The space where you are not trying to become anything. You are just being. And in that being, a different kind of desire is born. Not a desire to change what is, but to stay close to it, to sit with it, to melt into it. This desire has no tension, no hunger. It is not impatient. It does not demand. It just whispers softly, "Stay here. Do not leave this stillness." You may have felt this before, but forgotten. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins. You become aware of peace, but then your mind forgets. You become aware of presence, but then life distracts you. You taste stillness, but then the world pulls you back into noise, and the desireless desire fades into the background, waiting patiently for your return. Picture someone meditating for the first time. They sit in silence. Their thoughts race. Their body feels uncomfortable. But then something shifts, maybe for just a few seconds. A window opens inside them. A moment of deep stillness appears. Not sleep, not dullness, but clear and quiet awareness. They do not feel like chasing anything. They do not feel like escaping anything. They are just there, and then the mind returns. Thoughts rush back. The moment ends. But something remains, a gentle trace of that peace, a desire not to get it back, but simply to return to that place without effort, without force. That is the core of the desireless desire. It asks for nothing. But when you touch it, everything feels complete. Unlike other desires, this one does not come from the outside world. It rises from within. It is not born out of fear or ambition. It comes from a recognition, a silent knowing that you are already enough, that the world may spin, but you do not need to chase it. This kind of desire has no timeline. It does not say, "Someday I will find peace." It says, "Peace is already here. Can I stay with it?" It does not say, "One day I will be free." It says, "I am free now if I just notice." But here comes the riddle. The moment you try to hold on to this desireless state, it slips away. The moment you want it too much, it vanishes. Because the wanting itself becomes a noise, and the desireless desire lives only in silence, So you learn to return not with effort, but with surrender, not with grasping, but with letting go. There is no map for this journey, no steps, no strategies, only reminders. Like the breeze on a quiet evening, it touches your skin, then disappears. You cannot catch it, but you can sit with it, like a smile that comes from nowhere when you watch a child laugh. You cannot force it, but it comes on its own. The desireless desire is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. It is always there, beneath the noise of ordinary wanting. It waits quietly behind your eyes, behind your breath, behind your thoughts. It does not speak in words. It speaks in feelings, in the warmth of being present, in the ease of being alone without feeling lonely, in the joy of doing nothing and feeling complete. And when you forget it, do not worry. It never leaves. It only waits. Every time you slow down, every time you breathe without rushing, every time you look at the sky and feel the wonder without needing to explain it, it returns. Not loudly, but gently. It is not asking for more. It is asking you to notice what is already here. So next time you find yourself in stillness, even for a moment, listen closely. You may hear it. That soft inner voice that asks for nothing, that wants nothing, but still feels alive. That is the desireless desire, not a flame that burns, but a light that stays. The observer's dilemma. Imagine sitting alone on a wooden bench in a quiet park just after a light rain. The grass is still wet, leaves glisten with water. You are watching a child chase a butterfly, laughing without care. A man walks by, humming softly to himself. In the distance, an old couple sits together, sharing silence as if it were a language. Everything is calm, everything is alive. But you are not part of it. You are simply watching. You are not thinking much. You are not judging, just observing. And then it hits you. You feel more like a witness to life than someone truly living it. You are not the one laughing, not the one humming, not the one holding hands. You are just the one watching it all pass by. And for a moment, that feels peaceful. But slowly, a strange tension begins to rise. You ask yourself, if I am always watching life, when do I actually live it? This is the observer's dilemma. It begins in moments of deep awareness. When your mind becomes quiet and your thoughts slow down, you begin to notice everything. The breeze on your skin, the way your chest rises and falls, the feeling of your clothes touching your body. It is all happening, and you are aware of it. You are present. But the more you observe, the more separate you can begin to feel. As if there is a distance growing between you and the world, a gap between the experiencer and the experience. You are no longer the person walking through the forest. You are the presence watching the person walk. You are no longer the voice in conversation. You are the space in which the voice echoes. At first, this feels like freedom, a release from chaos. You no longer get lost in the emotions, the drama, the noise. You are above it. You are the silent witness. But then comes the dilemma. How can you truly live while watching everything from the outside? How can you dance if you are busy analyzing the rhythm? How can you cry if you are watching your tears fall as if they belong to someone else? The awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold here. You become so aware that you forget what it means to simply be. You forget the natural flow, the feeling of losing yourself in a moment, the warmth of being fully human without analysis. You start to feel like a shadow of yourself, present, but not participating, calm, but not connected. The observer in you grows stronger, while the player in you slowly fades. And here is where the dilemma deepens. Because the observer is not wrong. The observer brings clarity. It helps you see beyond reaction. It helps you respond rather than react. It brings peace in places where there was once pain. But if you get lost in it, you begin to float above your own life, always watching, never touching. Imagine someone watching a campfire. The flames dance, the sparks rise. The heat warms their face. If they sit too far back, they miss the warmth. If they lean too close, they might get burned. But somewhere in between is the perfect distance, where you can feel the fire and still see its shape. The observer's dilemma is about finding that distance, because life asks us to both see and feel, to witness and to participate, to be aware of the moment and still be fully in it. When you are lost in emotion, the observer pulls you out. When you are drowning in thought, the observer reminds you that you are not your mind. But once you are free, the challenge is not to stay detached. The challenge is to return, to step back into the dance with open eyes and a quiet mind. You are not meant to only observe your life. You are meant to live it. You are meant to laugh without watching your own smile, to cry without analyzing your pain, to fall in love without measuring how deeply you have fallen. The observer within you is a gift. It gives you space. It gives you stillness. But it was never meant to replace your experience. It was meant to support it, to hold your hand when things get too heavy, to remind you of who you are when the world pulls you in different directions. The real peace lies in balance, in being present enough to watch your life, but human enough to live it fully. The dilemma only becomes a trap when you forget that the observer and the participant are not enemies. They are not opposites. They are two parts of the same being, two sides of the same presence. You can be in the middle of a deep conversation and still feel the observer quietly noticing your tone, your posture, your breath. You can be dancing in the rain and still feel that quiet awareness smiling within you. Not judging, not separating, just holding space. The goal is not to shut down the observer. The goal is to stop using it as an escape, to stop hiding behind awareness, to stop confusing detachment with wisdom. Life is messy. It is emotional. It is wild and unpredictable, and you are meant to taste all of it, the joy and the sorrow, the beauty and the confusion. You are not just the one who sees, you are also the one who feels. You are not just the silence, you are also the song. And if you ever find yourself lost in observation, wondering if you are still part of the world, just remember this: you are here. You are living. You are not separate from the dance. You are the rhythm itself. Let the observer be your anchor. But do not forget to set sail. The memory that never happened. Imagine waking up from a dream so vivid that your chest still aches. You saw someone you have never met. You stood in a city that you do not recognize. Yet, as you lie in bed with your eyes open, you feel a deep connection to it all. Like you lived it, like it belonged to you. You try to shake it off, but the feelings linger. You feel nostalgia for a moment that never existed. You miss someone who was never real. You remember the feeling of holding their hand, hearing their laugh, standing under a light drizzle beside a bookstore that may not even exist. This is the memory that never happened. It is not just about dreams. It is also about those strange moments in real life, when you walk into a new place and it feels strangely familiar, or when you hear a piece of music for the first time and tears fill your eyes as if it is tied to a part of your soul. You look for the source of that emotion, but you find nothing, just a deep echo from nowhere. We are taught to believe that memory is linear, that it is a clean archive of our past, something that records experiences and stores them safely in the back of our minds. But what if memory is not just a record? What if it is also a mirror that reflects not only what was, but what could have been, what should have been, what your soul quietly longed for? The awareness-amnesia paradox begins here. You feel something, you know it in your bones, but you forget why. You forget where it came from, so your mind tries to explain it. It creates stories. It looks for connections. But sometimes there is no story, no timeline, just the feeling. And that is what makes it so confusing. We remember without remembering. You sit across from someone you just met, and something inside you softens, not because of what they say, but because of what they feel like. familiar, like a home you have never lived in. You walk through a street in a new city, and a wave of peace rushes over you. Not because of what you see, but because something in your body already knows the rhythm of that place. It is as if life has planted seeds inside us, seeds of emotion, seeds of places, seeds of people, and from time to time they bloom without warning. This is not fantasy. This is the mystery of being human. We want every emotion to make sense, every tear to have a reason. But sometimes your heart remembers things that your mind has never seen, and that is not a mistake. That is part of the deeper design. Memory is not always about what happened. Sometimes it is about what your soul was prepared to receive. Sometimes it is about the connections you feel in a realm beyond logic. We carry stories in our bodies, movements, smells, sounds, unfinished notes from music we have never heard before. They arrive as memory, but leave us with more questions than answers. And here is the riddle. The more we try to explain it, the more distant it becomes, like chasing fog. It disappears when you try to hold it, but if you sit quietly, it surrounds you, comforts you, reminds you that not everything needs to be explained. Some memories do not need a past, they only need presence. And this can be a strange kind of comfort, because it means you are bigger than your timeline, bigger than your visible story. You are more than what you can recall. You are the witness of things you do not even know you have seen. You are the echo of things that never happened in this life, but still left an impression. Maybe you once stood by a quiet lake in another life. Maybe you once whispered words in a language your tongue no longer remembers. Maybe you once loved someone who is now a stranger passing you in a crowd. Or maybe, just maybe, the memory that never happened is not about a past life at all. Maybe it is a future moment reaching back to you, a kind of emotional déjà vu, your soul showing you what is waiting down the road, preparing you for it before you get there. And so, the question becomes, can you trust these silent echoes? Can you allow space in your heart for feelings without explanations? The world often tells us to doubt what cannot be proven, but the truth is, some of the most real things in life cannot be explained. Love, peace, awe, nostalgia for a life you never lived. They arrive quietly, and they leave quietly. But they leave something behind, a gentle reminder that you are more than memory. You are the space that holds it. You are not just your experiences. You are also your capacity to feel what cannot be seen. And the memory that never happened? It is a doorway, one that does not open into the past, but into the mystery of who you are, right now, the freedom of limits. Picture this man. He lives alone in a small mountain cabin surrounded by forests. The nearest town is hours away. His phone rarely works. The shelves in his home are nearly empty. Just a few books, a worn-out journal, a simple bed, a kettle. He wakes up with the sun, cuts firewood, cooks his food slowly, and spends hours sitting by the window just watching snowflakes fall. From the outside, it looks like a life of limits. No fast internet, no big cities, no wild adventures, no endless choices. But if you ask him how he feels, he will smile quietly and say, free. This is the freedom of limits. It sounds like a contradiction. How can you feel free when you are surrounded by restrictions? How can limitation become liberation? But the truth is, sometimes it is only within boundaries that we begin to breathe deeply. Only when choices are few do we begin to feel clarity. Only when the noise fades do we begin to hear our own voice. We are raised to believe that freedom means having more options, more control, more movement. And yes, those things can be beautiful. But too much freedom, without any structure, can become a burden. It can become noise. It can scatter your focus. It can leave you lost in a sea of possibilities, unsure which direction to take. Imagine walking into a massive library where every book is blank. Infinite pages, infinite options. At first it feels like a dream. You can write anything, do anything, be anyone. But soon, the blankness becomes overwhelming. You do not know where to begin. You start writing, then erase. You write again, then question yourself. The freedom feels endless, but it also feels heavy. Now, picture a different scene. A small notebook, only 20 pages, a single pen. You sit beside a candle and begin to write. And because your space is limited, every word matters. Every sentence carries weight. Your thoughts become sharper. The act becomes sacred. This is the paradox. Limits, when chosen with awareness, give meaning. The awareness-amnesia paradox begins to show up here. We forget that boundaries can be beautiful. We forget that choosing less is sometimes the path to feeling more. We become so focused on breaking free from limits that we never ask ourselves, free for what? A bird without wings is trapped. But a bird without the sky is also trapped. It needs both body and boundary to truly fly. You need both edges and openness to truly live. Think about relationships. Total independence sounds ideal, but real connection happens when two people choose to stay, when they commit, when they build trust inside a shared space. That space is not open to everyone, and that is what makes it special. The limit becomes the container for deep love. Or think about music. The beauty of a song comes not from endless sound, but from rhythm, from tempo, from pauses. From the silence between notes, remove the structure and it becomes noise. Keep the limits and it becomes art. Your own life works the same way. You may think that success means doing everything, going everywhere, being everyone. But real depth comes when you choose one thing fully, when you let go of all the other doors and walk through one with presence. The man in the cabin is not limited. He is focused. He has removed what he does not need, so he can fully feel what he already has. His world is not small, it is quiet. And in that quiet, he can breathe. We often confuse limits with lack, but not having everything does not mean you are missing something. Sometimes it means you are finally able to notice what was always there. Look at nature. A tree cannot grow in every direction. It grows toward the light, slowly, with patience, with limits. And in that limitation, it becomes strong. A river flows within its banks. If it tries to spread everywhere, it becomes a flood. But within its path, it becomes a source of life. And you too, within your chosen limits, can find your own rhythm. This does not mean you should stop growing. It means you should grow with awareness, with choice, with intention, because freedom is not about having everything. It is about knowing what matters and giving yourself fully to it. There is a strange peace in limitation, a stillness that comes when you are not trying to escape, a depth that comes when you stay. When you stop chasing the next thing, when you start listening to what is already inside you, the freedom of limits is not a rule, it is a reminder that you are not here to do it all. You are here to do what matters. And sometimes that means closing 100 doors to walk through one, not because you are weak, but because you are clear. The man in the cabin did not run from the world. He returned to himself. He found freedom not in having everything, but in choosing what he needed and letting go of the rest. So the next time you feel stuck, ask yourself, are you trapped or are you being shaped? Are you being held back or are you being guided? And maybe, just maybe, the limit you fear is not a cage, but a doorway to something deeper, to something real, to the quiet kind of freedom that does not shout, but stays. The clarity in confusion illusion. Imagine walking through a thick fog in the early morning, the kind that swallows trees and blurs the sky. Every step forward feels uncertain. You cannot see more than a few feet ahead. The ground beneath your feet is soft and wet. The air is silent, muffled by the mist. There is no clear path, no signs, no map. Just fog and the sound of your own breath. But something strange happens. In the middle of all this confusion, You feel deeply present. Every step becomes a choice. Every pause becomes a question. You are not distracted. You are not lost in thoughts. You are here, fully here. And despite the fog, something inside you feels clear. This is the clarity and confusion illusion. It is the strange experience of finding a kind of sharpness within the blur, a sense of focus inside chaos. It does not make sense at first. How can clarity come from confusion? How can we feel centered when nothing is certain? Most of the time, we think of confusion as a problem, something to fix, a phase to escape. We want answers. We want direction. We want control. And when life feels unclear, we panic. We question ourselves. We try to make the fog go away. But what if the fog is not the problem? What if the confusion is not a mistake? What if it is a teacher? The awareness-amnesia paradox begins here. We become aware in moments of confusion, but we forget to notice that awareness. We focus so much on escaping the fog that we forget how alive it makes us feel. How awake, how sensitive, how still. When everything is clear, we move quickly, automatically. We do not pause to think. We follow patterns. We rely on the known. But when life becomes confusing, something shifts. We slow down. We start paying attention. We begin to ask real questions, not the ones we already know the answers to, but the kind that change us. Who am I really? What do I want? What matters now? These questions are born in the fog, not in clarity. Imagine a painter standing in front of a blank canvas. They have too many ideas, too many colors, too many images fighting for space in their mind. They feel stuck. But that moment of confusion is not failure. It is the space where something new can begin, the stillness before creation, the breath before the first stroke. Or think about someone who has just left a job, or a relationship, or a city. They feel lost, uncertain. But that confusion is what allows them to see clearly, to realize what they no longer want, to explore what they never allowed themselves to dream before. The clarity is not separate from the confusion. It grows from it. The illusion is thinking we are lost, when in truth, we are simply no longer following an old map. And that is where the real clarity begins. You cannot find a new way while walking the same path. You cannot hear your deeper voice while following someone else's script. So confusion arrives, like fog, like a pause, like an invitation. It tells you stop, look, listen. Not outside, but within. It pulls you away from answers and leads you into questions. And questions are not weakness. They are the beginning of wisdom. We forget this. We forget that some of the most beautiful moments in life begin with not knowing, falling in love, starting a new chapter, letting go of an old belief. All of them begin with a kind of confusion. And within that confusion is the seed of something clearer, something real. But you must be still long enough to let it unfold. Most people run from confusion. They try to fix it too quickly. They jump to decisions. They force conclusions. But clarity that is rushed is not clarity. It is fear wearing a mask. Real clarity is slow, gentle. It rises on its own, like morning light through the fog. You do not need to chase it. You only need to stay awake. Let the confusion be what it is. Let it teach you. Let it slow you down. Let it bring you home to yourself. Because when the fog clears, what you see is not something new. It is something you always knew, but were too distracted to notice. The truth is, the fog is not outside you. It is the noise in your mind. And when you sit with it instead of fighting it, it begins to settle. And what is left behind is not confusion, but clarity, the kind that cannot be forced, the kind that does not need to shout, the kind that simply says, "You are here," and that is enough. The fear of emptiness that fills. Imagine sitting in a quiet room with nothing in it, no music, no movement, no screens, just a single wooden chair in the middle and the soft hum of silence. You sit down. At first it feels peaceful, like the world has taken a deep breath and paused. But after a few minutes, something shifts. The silence grows louder. Your mind begins to itch. Your body wants to move. The stillness starts to feel like a weight, and a question begins to rise from somewhere deep inside. What am I supposed to do with all this emptiness? This is the fear of emptiness that fills. It is the strange fear we feel when life gives us space, when we are not busy, not chasing, not consuming, not doing anything. We think emptiness is something to avoid, something cold, something hollow. But what if that emptiness is not empty at all? What if it is full of something we have forgotten? We live in a world that fears stillness. Silence is treated like a problem. Gaps in conversation make people uncomfortable. Blank time in our day feels like a waste, and so we keep filling. More noise, more tasks, more scrolling, more thoughts. Because if we stop even for a moment, the emptiness begins to rise, and with it comes fear, not the fear of danger, but the fear of facing ourselves. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold. Deep down, we are aware that there is something sacred in silence, something true in stillness. But we forget. We forget the richness of quiet. We forget that we do not need to chase meaning sometimes. Meaning waits for us in the pause, but we are not trained to sit with it. We confuse activity with aliveness. We confuse noise with truth. We confuse motion with meaning. So when life gives us a moment of space, a breakup, a loss, a break from routine, we panic. We feel the emptiness rising, and we rush to cover it with anything, even things that hurt us, because it is not the emptiness we fear. It is what it reveals. It reveals the parts of us we have ignored, the questions we never answered, the emotions we buried under busyness. But here is the quiet twist in the riddle. That emptiness you fear, it is not trying to harm you, it is trying to hold you. It is a container, a space, a silent room where truth echoes. And if you can sit with it long enough, something begins to change. The fear softens. The silence opens, and you start to see that the emptiness is not empty. It is full, full of rest, full of clarity, full of things that the noise had hidden from you. Picture a seed planted in the soil. It sits in darkness, in stillness. Nothing seems to be happening. But slowly, something inside it stirs. Roots begin to form. Life begins to rise. Not in the light, but in the emptiness. That is what happens in you. You may think you are lost when you feel empty, but maybe you are just being planted. Maybe this silence is the place where something deep inside you begins to grow. Not the part of you that wants to perform, but the part of you that wants to heal. The part of you that does not need an audience, only attention. So the next time you feel the ache of emptiness, do not run. Sit, breathe. Notice. Let the stillness speak. It will not shout. It will whisper. And what it says may surprise you. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not hollow. You are clearing space, not for more noise, but for what really matters. For the truth beneath the surface. For the love you had forgotten. For the peace that does not need fixing. And when you learn to stay in the empty space without filling it, something begins to fill you. Not from the outside, but from within. A quiet fullness, a calm presence, a light that does not flicker. And maybe that is what you were looking for all along. Not distraction, not answers, just the courage to feel the stillness. And remember what was always there, waiting, the sound of silence paradox. Imagine walking deep into the heart of an ancient forest, the kind untouched by cities, where even birds hesitate to sing. The leaves do not rustle. The trees stand still. The wind has gone quiet. You keep walking until you find a patch of earth that feels untouched. You sit down and close your eyes. At first, you expect to hear something. Maybe the whisper of a breeze or the distant call of a bird. But there is nothing. Just silence. pure, and wide. And yet, strangely, it does not feel empty. In fact, it feels loud, not in volume, but in presence. The silence begins to speak, not in words, but in sensation. You start to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You notice your breath, your heartbeat, a soft ringing in your ears. The more you listen, the more you begin to feel surrounded by something very real. The silence is not the absence of sound. It is a sound of its own. This is the sound of silence paradox. It is the strange experience where the quietest moments seem to carry the deepest messages. It is when silence, instead of being empty, becomes full. When it stops being the space between sounds and becomes a sound in itself. We often think of silence as nothing, as the blank space before music begins, or the awkward pause in a conversation. But real silence is not nothing. Real silence is alive. It listens back. It holds you. It sharpens everything you feel. In the modern world, silence is rare. Most of us move from one sound to the next. Notifications, conversations, traffic, music in the background. We are constantly surrounded by noise. And after a while, we forget what silence sounds like. We forget that silence even exists. That is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold. Deep down, we know silence. We come from it. We were born into it. But we forget. We forget that silence is not a lack, but a presence. And when we finally return to it, something inside us begins to wake up. In silence, you hear your own mind. Not the surface thoughts, but the deep ones. The ones that usually hide behind distraction. The fears you avoid. The hopes you never speak out loud. The feelings you thought were gone. Silence brings them to the surface, gently and without judgment. But here comes the paradox. We often avoid silence because we are afraid of what it will reveal. We think silence is cold, lonely, uncomfortable. But when we sit with it, we discover something else. We discover that the silence is not empty. We are. And that is not a bad thing. It simply means we now have space. Space to feel. Space to breathe. Space to remember. Because the sound of silence is not about hearing with your ears. It is about hearing with your presence. Imagine being in the same room with someone you love. Neither of you says a word. You just sit together. No pressure to speak. No need to fill the space. And yet, you feel completely connected. That is the sound of silence. Or think about a monk sitting in meditation. No music. No words. No movement. And yet that silence carries weight. It holds depth. It opens doors inside the mind that no amount of noise can unlock. The sound of silence is not made by absence. It is made by attention. The deeper you listen, the more you hear. And what you hear is not outside of you. It is you. Silence is the mirror that reflects your inner landscape. When the noise dies down, you begin to notice what has always been there. And slowly, the fear of silence fades. What once felt uncomfortable becomes comforting. What once felt empty becomes sacred. You begin to crave those quiet moments, not because you want to escape, but because you want to return. Return to something that does not need fixing, does not need explaining. It just is. But the world rarely invites us into silence. It teaches us to respond, to speak, to react, to produce. So we must create our own moments of quiet, a walk alone without headphones, a breath between sentences, a pause before you reply, a few minutes with your eyes closed, just listening. And in those moments the sound of silence returns. Not loudly, not suddenly, but slowly, gently. And when it does, you feel it. A stillness that holds you, a clarity that does not come from thinking, a knowing that cannot be explained. Just presence, just peace. And here lies the paradox. You searched for silence thinking it would bring nothing, but it gave you everything. You ran from the quiet thinking it would make you feel alone, but it made you feel whole. The sound of silence is not the end of something. It is the beginning of seeing clearly, of feeling deeply, of remembering the part of you that does not need to speak to be heard. So the next time you feel lost in the noise of life, step away for a moment, not far, just inward. Close your eyes, turn down the volume of your thoughts, and listen. You may not hear words, but you will feel something truer. The silence is still there. It has always been there, waiting. And when you return to it, it will welcome you back, like it never left, because it never did. The self that watches the self. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, alone in a quiet room. The lights are dim, the air is still, and for a moment it is just you and your reflection. You look into your own eyes, not in a casual way, not like when fixing your hair or adjusting your collar, but deeper, as if searching for something behind the eyes, something quiet, something hidden. You raise your hand and wave slowly. The reflection follows. You blink. It blinks. Every move you make, it mirrors. But then, a strange thought enters. Who is watching whom? Are you looking at your reflection, or is your reflection somehow looking back at you? And then something even stranger happens. You begin to notice that there is another layer beneath the one looking into the mirror. A part of you that is not doing the looking, but noticing the one who is. A silent witness behind the eyes. One step back, just observing. This is the self that watches the self. It is not imagination. It is not just a trick of the mind. It is something real, something we all experience at different moments. It shows up when we pause, when we become deeply aware, when we are no longer lost in doing, but simply being. There is the part of you that acts, and the part of you that watches the one who acts, and then the part that watches the one who watches. This layering is not a puzzle to solve. It is a door, a quiet entry into something deeper, something most people never stop long enough to feel. In everyday life, we live mostly in the first layer. We move through the world, reacting, responding, doing what needs to be done, but sometimes we step back. We notice ourselves thinking. We hear our own voice in our head. We watch ourselves feel a certain way, and in that moment we become aware of being aware. That is when the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to soften, because in that pause you remember that you are not just the thoughts in your mind. You are the one who sees them. You are not just the emotions that rise and fall. You are the one who feels them. You are not just the character in the story. You are the one who knows there is a story. But most of the time, we forget. We fall into the dream of life and become identified with the first layer. We think we are the voice in our head. We think we are the anxiety, the doubt, the excitement, the sadness. But those things pass. They change. They shift. And something in you remains the same, the quiet observer, the self that watches the self. And here lies the paradox. The more you observe, the less you are caught. The more you step back, the more you feel free, not because you are escaping, but because you are returning to a part of you that does not change when the mood changes. That does not shake when the world shakes. That simply watches, calm, open, present. Imagine walking through a crowded city, cars passing, people talking, everything moving fast. And yet, there is a part of you that is not in a hurry. A part of you that is just noticing, just being. You are not trying to control the moment. You are just there. That awareness is the deeper self. And it is always there. It was there when you were a child, noticing wonder. It was there during your worst days, quietly witnessing pain. It is there when you lie in bed, unable to sleep. It is there in the shower, when you suddenly feel alive. It is the thread that runs through every version of you. It does not speak. It does not judge. It just sees. But we forget it. Because the world teaches us to focus on the surface, on identity, on performance, on labels. But who you are is not a label, not a job, not even a name. You are the space in which all those things happen, and when you sit quietly and let the noise fade, you return, you remember, not with the mind, but with the heart, with presence. There is something sacred in the self that watches the self. It brings a softness to your life. You no longer react as quickly. You begin to observe more deeply. You speak with more care. You listen without trying to fix. You begin to live from a quieter place, a place not moved by opinion, a place not caught in constant craving. You begin to see your own thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky, and you realize you are the sky, not the cloud. You are the space, not the content. And from that space, life begins to unfold in a new way, not controlled, not predicted, but lived fully and gently. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, pause. Notice who is watching, not the voice that is panicking, not the feeling that is rising, but the one quietly seeing it all. That is you, the real you. And it has always been there, watching kindly, waiting patiently, ready for you to remember, not with your mind, but with your being. Because awareness is not something you create, it is something you return to. And the self that watches the self, it is not separate, it is you, just closer to the truth. The quiet panic principle. Picture this woman. She sits on a clean couch in a beautiful home. The sunlight streams through the curtains. Her phone is silent. Her family is safe. There is no emergency, no noise, no threat. From the outside, her life looks peaceful. Everything seems in place. But inside her chest, something is stirring. Not loudly, not sharply, just a soft ache, a tightness in her breath. A weight she cannot explain. She smiles when someone walks in, but the panic does not leave. It hides under the silence. It grows quietly. This is the quiet panic principle. It is the strange experience of feeling anxious in the calm, feeling unsettled in stillness, when everything is okay, but something inside whispers that it is not. A fear that does not shout, a panic that moves like a shadow, quiet, invisible, but real. Most people imagine panic as loud, as fast breathing, racing hearts, shaking hands, but not all panic comes crashing in. Some panic enters silently. It walks beside you while you go about your day. It hides behind normal routines, behind good jobs, behind kind smiles. It becomes so quiet that you almost forget it is there. But your body remembers. The awareness-amnesia paradox begins here. You are aware of a discomfort, a strange fear, but you forget to notice it clearly. You push it down. You tell yourself it is nothing. And the more you ignore it, the deeper it hides. Not gone, just buried. And even when life looks calm, the panic continues to breathe beneath the surface. Imagine walking into a quiet room after a long day. You sit down, you turn off your phone, you breathe, but instead of peace, you feel restless, like something is missing, like something bad is waiting around the corner. Your hands do not shake, your heart does not race, but you cannot relax. That is quiet panic. It is not always about fear of something specific. It is not always about the past or the future. Sometimes it is just a silent fear of stillness itself, a fear of space, a fear of listening to what is inside. Because when everything gets quiet, the noise inside gets louder. You might be afraid of what you will find if you stop and listen. Old thoughts, buried grief, lost dreams. And so you stay busy. You keep moving, you keep talking, you keep filling the air with sound and the day with tasks. But inside, the panic stays, quietly holding on. This is not weakness. This is not failure. This is a natural response to a world that teaches us to be loud, to be fast, to keep going. But true healing begins when you finally stop, when you sit in that quiet panic and say, I see you. The quiet panic principle is not about removing panic. It is about understanding it, making space for it, letting it speak without letting it control. Because panic becomes louder when it is ignored, but it softens when it is seen. You may not know why it is there. You may not have a clear story. That is okay. The mind does not always need a reason to feel uneasy. Sometimes the heart holds things the mind cannot explain. And sometimes panic is not about danger. It is about disconnection. You feel panic not because something is wrong, but because you feel far from yourself, far from your truth, far from your center. Quiet panic is a message, a signal, a quiet alarm from within. Not to run, not to escape, but to pause, to listen, to return. Return to the breath, return to the body, return to the present. And when you do, the panic might still be there, but it will begin to move. It will begin to speak. It will begin to soften. Not because you fixed it, but because you stopped ignoring it. Imagine sitting beside a child who is scared, not saying anything, just being there. That is how you treat your panic. Not with judgment, not with force, but with presence, with compassion. And over time, the panic begins to loosen its grip. It no longer needs to shout, because now it is being heard. The quiet panic principle teaches us that not all fear is loud. Some fear waits in the stillness. Some fear wears a smile. Some fear sounds like silence. But silence is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of feeling, the beginning of listening, the beginning of returning to a self that was never broken, only unheard. So the next time you feel a quiet discomfort in a calm moment, do not rush to escape it. Sit with it, feel it, breathe through it, and say softly, I am here. I am listening. Because even panic, when held with care, becomes peace. The invisible obvious. Imagine standing in a room you have lived in your whole life. The same walls, the same light switch near the door, the same quiet creak in the floorboard just before the window. You walk in and out of it every day. You know every object by heart. But then, one day, someone visits. They stop and ask, why do you keep your books there? You pause. You look. And you realize you have never actually thought about it. You never chose that spot. It just happened. And now it has become invisible. You see it every day, but you do not really see it anymore. This is the invisible obvious. It is the strange way our minds stop noticing what is always there. The most obvious things, the most important truths, slowly fade into the background. Not because they are hidden, but because they are constant. And when something stays long enough, the mind begins to skip over it, like it is no longer worth noticing. You may not think of this as a problem, but here is the quiet paradox. Some of the deepest truths are not hiding. They are right in front of us. We just stopped looking. The mind has a way of focusing on the new, the dramatic, the loud. But what if the most meaningful parts of your life are not in the big moments, but in the simple ones you forgot to see? That is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold. You are aware, but you forget to notice. You are surrounded by beauty, by peace, by truth. But because they are not loud, you forget they are there. The mind seeks more. It chases answers. It looks outward. But the answers were never missing. They were simply overlooked, hiding in plain sight. Think about your breath. It has been with you since the day you were born. Every moment, every emotion, every silence. And yet, how often do you truly feel it? Not just during meditation or panic, but in the quiet in-between moments. Your breath is the invisible obvious, always there, always carrying you, but forgotten. Or think about the people you see every day, a parent, a friend, a stranger at the tea stall. You see their face, you hear their voice. But do you really see them? Or have they blended into the background of your routine? This is not because you are careless. It is because the brain is designed to filter, to save energy, to recognize patterns and skip the details. But in doing so, it often filters out what matters most. You start to walk through life with blurred eyes, seeing without seeing, hearing without listening, feeling without presence. And then one day, something happens, a health scare, a goodbye, a quiet morning where everything just pauses, and suddenly, what was invisible becomes obvious. The way the sunlight hits your floor, the sound of your own laughter, the softness in someone's eyes when they say your name. You ask yourself, how did I miss this? How was I so close to something, but never really with it? The invisible obvious is not a flaw in your perception. It is a reminder, a gentle nudge to return, to look again, to see the ordinary not as background noise, but as the main song. Because when you slow down and really see what has always been there, something softens, something shifts. You begin to notice the weight of your own body in a chair, the texture of silence, the pause between words, the fact that you are here, breathing, alive, awake. And here is the beauty in the paradox. The things you forgot were never gone. They were waiting, patiently, for your eyes to soften, for your awareness to return, for your heart to open again. Sometimes we think clarity means finding something new, but often clarity is simply remembering what was always true. It is the cup of tea in your hand, the gentle beat of your heart, the quiet space between thoughts. It is not hidden. It is right here. But to see it, you must pause. You must soften. You must listen. The invisible obvious begins to show itself the moment you stop rushing past the moment, when you stop waiting for something bigger and notice that this moment, just as it is already full. And the more you practice this, the more the world begins to open, not with noise, but with depth, not with excitement, but with peace. You start to see that the way the curtain moves in the wind is beautiful, that the way someone says goodbye carries weight, that the way you place your feet on the floor when you wake up is part of your ritual of being human. You return to presence, and in presence, the invisible becomes obvious. Not because it changed, but because you did. So the next time you feel lost, do not search for something far away. Look around, feel your breath. Listen to the room. Notice what has always been there. You might find that the truth you have been chasing is not out there. It is right here, waiting for your eyes to see again, waiting for your heart to remember. The invisible obvious is the doorway back to yourself, and it opens with stillness. The illusion of choice maze. Picture this boy. He stands in front of a massive wall covered in buttons. Each one is labeled with a different future. One says happiness, another says wealth, one says freedom, one says peace. Some are bright and colorful, others are plain and quiet. He is told that all of these buttons lead to different lives. All he has to do is choose. But the more he looks at them, the harder it becomes. His hands start to shake. He moves closer to one, then pulls back. What if the better one is 2 rows down? What if he chooses wrong? What if the best life is just one button away from the one he picks? This is the illusion of choice maze. It is the feeling of having endless freedom, but being trapped in indecision. It is the quiet stress that rises when too many options begin to feel like no option at all. We are told that choice is power, that freedom is found in having more, but sometimes more choices only bring more noise, more doubt, more pressure. And slowly, the idea of freedom begins to feel like a burden. From the outside, it looks like opportunity, but inside it feels like a maze. Every direction feels like the wrong one. Every step forward feels like a step away from something else. And at the center of it all is the quiet fear of missing out. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to rise. You are aware that you are making choices. You are aware of your freedom. But you forget the feeling underneath. You forget to notice that many of your choices are not truly your own. They are shaped by the world around you, by the expectations placed on you, by the fear of regret, the fear of being left behind. So you keep choosing, but you never really arrive. You change paths. You chase new dreams. You try new things, but deep down, something still feels off. You start to wonder if you are living someone else's life, following a voice that is not yours, saying yes to things that do not bring peace. The maze is not built with walls. It is built with questions. What if? What now? What else? And the more you ask, the more you spin. Imagine standing in a grocery aisle filled with 50 different types of cereal. You came in for breakfast, but now you are frozen, reading labels, comparing boxes, looking at prices, trying to predict which one will bring you the most joy. But the truth is, they are all just cereal, and all you wanted was to feel full. Life works the same way. We think one choice will change everything. That one decision will bring clarity. But sometimes, it is not about the choice. It is about the state of mind behind it. When you are connected to yourself, even the simplest path feels right. But when you are lost inside, even the biggest door feels wrong. The illusion of choice makes you believe that fulfillment lies in picking the perfect option. But real peace begins when you stop chasing perfect. When you slow down enough to ask a different kind of question, not what should I choose, but why am I choosing? Not what is next, but what feels true, because not every door is meant for you. Not every path leads home. Some options are just distractions in disguise, invitations to keep walking in circles. And the longer you stay in the maze, the more you forget what you were looking for in the first place. That is the paradox. You are not lost because of your choices. You are lost because you forgot your center. The part of you that knows stillness. The part of you that remembers what peace feels like. That part is not impressed by how many options you have. It only wants to feel honest again. So how do you step out of the maze? Not by choosing faster, not by having better logic, but by listening more deeply, by returning to the space beneath the questions, the silence behind the noise, where clarity does not shout, it whispers. You already know what matters. You already feel the difference between a choice made from fear and a choice made from presence. The body knows, the breath knows, the stillness knows. But the maze keeps you moving too fast to hear it. So pause. Let go of the need to pick the right door. Let go of the idea that your future depends on perfect decisions. Instead, ask one simple thing. What brings me peace now? Not tomorrow. Not 10 years from now. Now, that is your guide. That is the real freedom hidden inside the maze. Not more choices, but more awareness. Because when you return to presence, the maze begins to dissolve. You no longer need to find the best path. You begin to create your own. And it does not need to be impressive. It just needs to be true. So next time you find yourself frozen in front of too many doors, stop asking what if. Start asking what is here, what is real, what is enough. And walk toward that, even if it is quiet, even if it is simple, because sometimes the smallest step taken from stillness is more powerful than 1,000 big choices made in panic. And when you walk from presence, you are no longer in the maze. You are home. The chaos of perfect order. Imagine a man who lives in a house where everything is in its right place. His shirts are folded with perfect edges. Every drawer is labeled. The books are lined up from tallest to shortest. The clock ticks exactly on time. The calendar on the wall has every task planned for the next 3 months. His phone buzzes with reminders not because he forgets things, but because he likes knowing exactly what is next. From the outside, it looks like a peaceful life. No clutter, no rush, no confusion. But something feels tight inside his chest. Not heavy, not painful, just tight, like a string pulled too far for too long. When he wakes up, He already knows what he is supposed to feel. When he eats, he already knows what time it should be. He does not have to think much, but he also does not feel much. This is the chaos of perfect order. It is the quiet tension that builds when everything seems under control, yet the soul feels restless. When every step is planned, every corner polished, and still, something feels off. You are not in crisis. You are not lost, but you do not feel alive. We are taught that order brings peace, and it often does. A clean space can bring clarity. A clear schedule can reduce stress. But when order becomes too rigid, something begins to bend on the inside. Slowly, quietly, until it cracks. It starts with small things. You stop listening to your feelings because the schedule has already decided what today is about. You stop exploring because the system already tells you what works. You stop pausing because there is no space in the routine for wonder. And this is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to rise. You are aware of your order. You built it. You even take pride in it. But you forget why. You forget the original purpose. It was supposed to serve your life, not become your life. Order begins as a tool for peace. But when it becomes the rule of your world, it slowly turns into quiet chaos. Not the kind that flips tables or breaks things, but the kind that removes the color from your days. That makes everything feel too clean, too predictable, too silent. It is like living in a song with only one note. No rise, no fall, just repetition. Imagine a painter who only uses the same shade of gray for every canvas. Every line is straight, every shape is perfect. But over time, they forget why they started painting in the first place. The joy fades. The spark disappears. There is no chaos to balance the beauty. And without that balance, it all feels hollow. Perfect order leaves no room for mystery. And mystery is what makes life feel alive. The unexpected laugh, the sudden change of plans, the moment of silence between two people who do not need to speak. These are the cracks where presence enters. But when the cracks are sealed, the light has nowhere to go. The chaos of perfect order is not loud. It whispers. It shows up when you feel numb even while doing everything right. When you reach the end of your checklist but still feel incomplete. When every drawer in your mind is neat but none of them open to wonder. It is the feeling of living in a perfectly decorated room with no windows. Comfortable, but closed. And here is the paradox. Real peace is not born from removing all chaos. It is born from making space for it. Because life is not a straight line. It bends, it moves, it forgets, it returns. And when you build a life that does not allow any mess, you also block the magic that lives inside that mess. Think about nature. A forest is not symmetrical. The branches twist. The leaves fall where they want. But that is what makes it beautiful. A river flows not in a straight line, but around rocks, through turns, over time. It finds its way not by planning, but by being. You are the same. You do not need perfect order to feel calm. You need space to feel real, to let your breath move at its own pace, to let your emotions rise and fall without labeling them right or wrong, to let your path change without seeing it as failure. So if you find yourself living inside perfect order but feeling tired in your soul, pause, not to break everything, not to rebel, but to ask, where have I hidden the chaos that brings me back to life? Where have I overpolished the rawness I used to love? And what would happen if I allowed a little more mess? Not to lose control, but to feel again, to create again, to breathe. Because the chaos you fear is not the enemy, it is the other half of peace. And without it, your life becomes a museum, neat, impressive. But still, the goal is not to choose chaos or order. It is to let them dance, to let order hold you gently, and let chaos remind you that you are alive. So next time your days feel too smooth, too quiet, too predictable, invite something new. Wake up without checking the plan. Take a walk without a direction. Let a conversation wander. Let yourself feel something unexpected. And trust that peace does not only come from perfect lines. Sometimes it comes from the curve that leads you somewhere unknown. And in that unknown, you remember that life is not about getting everything right. It is about feeling something real. Even if it is messy, even if it breaks the routine, even if it scares you. Because sometimes, in the middle of the most perfect order, the soul begins to whisper, "Let me breathe." The dreamer's dream loop. Picture this boy. He is lying under the stars on a warm night, his hands behind his head, his mind filled with pictures of who he could become: a singer, a traveler, a thinker, a storyteller. He is not chasing anything right now, just imagining, just drifting through soft dreams that make his chest feel light. He smiles at the sky and tells himself, one day, it will all come true. Years pass. He grows older. He studies hard. He works harder. But the dreams never leave. They just keep shifting. New goals, new plans, new versions of that one day. He is always reaching, always imagining a better moment that is just around the corner. He is living forward, but never arriving. This is the dreamer's dream loop. It begins softly, with hope, with vision, with the beautiful feeling that there is more to come. At first it lifts you. It gives you energy, a reason to wake up, a reason to move. But slowly, without warning, it turns into something else. The dream becomes the destination, but the destination keeps moving. The moment you get close, it slips further away. You keep dreaming, but you stop living, because you are always waiting for a version of life that does not exist yet. And this is where the awareness-amnesia paradox quietly sneaks in. You are aware of your dreams. You hold them close. You talk about them. You plan around them. But you forget to notice that your life is already happening, that the dream you thought would complete you is not the only thing that matters, that being here now is not a mistake. We are told to dream big, to chase success, to imagine better. And that is beautiful. But no one teaches us how to pause, how to sit with ourselves between the dreams, how to feel joy in the middle of uncertainty, how to stop waiting for later to begin feeling alive. So we keep running, chasing better jobs, better homes, better versions of ourselves. And in every version, the dream gets updated, the finish line moves, and we tell ourselves, not now, but soon, just a little more, and that little more becomes a lifetime. The loop continues when we do not realize we are in it, because it feels so close to purpose, so close to passion. But it becomes a trap when it keeps us one step away from now. You might be sitting in your room, with food in the kitchen, a roof over your head, and someone who loves you nearby. But your mind says, it is not enough yet. And so your body tenses, your breath shortens. You scroll through another video. You add another goal to your list. Because something inside keeps whispering, not yet. Not until the dream arrives. But the dream never really arrives, because you are the one who keeps moving it forward. This is not about giving up your vision. It is about learning to return. Return to the breath. Return to the step you are taking right now. Return to the cup of tea in your hand. Because dreams are not meant to replace the present. They are meant to rise from it. And if you do not learn to find peace in the middle of the journey, you will carry that same restlessness into every version of your future, even when you get the job, even when you reach the goal. Even when the crowd applauds, you will still feel like something is missing, because the habit of reaching never ends on its own. It ends when you stop and remember what it's like to be still. Imagine a girl writing in her journal. She writes about the future, about her plans, about her hopes, and then she stops. She looks outside the window. The light is golden. The trees are swaying. A bird lands gently on the ledge. For a moment she forgets to chase. She forgets to plan. She just watches. That moment is not the dream, it is the waking up, the soft breaking of the loop, the realization that she is already here, already breathing, already whole. You do not have to stop dreaming, but you must stop waiting for the dream to save you. Let it inspire you, not imprison you. Let it move through you, not take over you, because your value does not live in what you achieve. It lives in your ability to be present, even as you grow. To laugh today, even as you reach for tomorrow. To feel sadness now, even if joy is promised later. That is the balance. To dream without abandoning the moment. To plan without rejecting the now. To reach, but not forget to rest. Because the dreamer's dream loop is only dangerous when it blinds you to the life you are already living. When it turns the present into a waiting room. When it makes you believe that peace is always later. But later is not real. Only now is. And now is always waiting for you to notice. So the next time you feel the urge to chase something far away, pause. Breathe. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel the air in your lungs. Feel the weight of your own body holding itself. This is not the end of the dream. It is the beginning of coming home to yourself. And when you return to that home, the dream becomes lighter. It becomes clearer. It stops being an escape and starts being a companion. Not a place you must get to, but a song that moves with you. Step by step, moment by moment. Not in the distance, but here. The nothing that demands attention. Imagine this girl. She is sitting alone in her room after a long day. Her work is done. Her phone is silent. The light outside has turned soft. There is nothing urgent left to do. No calls to return. No emails to check. Everything is still. Everything is quiet. But instead of peace, she begins to feel uneasy. Her chest feels a little heavy. Her fingers twitch. She scrolls through her phone again, even though she just did that 2 minutes ago. She stands up, then sits down, then sighs. There is nothing wrong, and yet something inside is pulling at her. This is the nothing that demands attention. It is the strange weight that rises when everything goes still, the invisible discomfort that fills the room when the noise fades. You cannot see it, you cannot name it, but you can feel it, like a soft pressure, like the quiet ache of something missing, even when you cannot say what that something is. At first, it feels like boredom, like restlessness, like maybe you forgot something important, but the longer you sit with it, the more you start to realize it is not about anything specific. It is not tied to a task or a deadline. It is just there, a silent voice inside the silence. Not shouting, but not letting you rest either. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox slowly begins to take shape. You are aware that you are doing nothing. You are aware that everything around you is quiet. But you forget to notice the part of you that is still not okay with that. The part of you that thinks you should be doing more, feeling more, becoming more. We live in a world that fills every gap. Every pause is packed with a screen. Every silence is covered with sound. Every breath is chased by the next task. So when nothing shows up, it feels unnatural, like a mistake, like something is broken. But maybe nothing is not the problem. Maybe it is the mirror. Because in that nothing, you begin to feel everything. The thoughts you ignored, the emotions you buried, the questions you postponed, they begin to rise, softly, without force. But they do not leave. That is why nothing feels so loud. Because it is not really empty. It is full of the parts of you that you forget to meet. You scroll again. You open another app. You get up to clean something that is already clean, not because you want to, but because stillness feels too sharp. You are not tired, but you cannot rest, because doing nothing has become unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things feel unsafe. So you fill the moment. You mute the silence. You move faster. But the feeling stays. It follows you from one tab to another, from one room to the next, because it is not asking for distraction. It is asking to be felt, to be seen, to be heard. The nothing that demands attention is not trying to harm you. It is trying to return you to yourself. But you forgot how to sit with it, because we were never taught to rest without guilt, to be still without shame, to exist without explaining. So, we run from nothing. And in that running, we become tired. Not from the tasks, but from the hiding. We call it stress. We call it burnout. But maybe it is just the cost of never being with ourselves, of never truly stopping, of never listening to what rises in the quiet. Because when you finally stop, the silence speaks. And it does not say something is wrong. It just says, I am here. You forgot me, but I never left. It is the part of you that feels deeply, that notices without reacting, that lives beneath the surface of every moment. And when you give it attention, it begins to soften, not disappear, but soften. The restlessness becomes reflection. The discomfort becomes awareness. The quiet becomes sacred. And you realize that nothing is not an absence. It is an invitation to be, to breathe, to return, because there is a kind of healing that only happens in stillness, a kind of truth that only shows up when there is space. And that truth is not always comfortable, but it is always honest. So the next time you feel that strange pressure in a quiet moment, pause. Do not reach for your phone right away. Do not open a new tab. Just sit, breathe, feel the weight of your own body, feel the tension in your shoulders. Feel the questions rising without trying to solve them, and say softly, I see you. You are not nothing. You are the part of me I forgot to meet, the part of me that waits patiently beneath the surface. Not to be fixed, not to be judged, just to be noticed. And when you begin to notice, the feeling begins to shift, not quickly, but gently, like sunlight entering a quiet room. It is still the same space, but now it feels different. Now it feels alive. And maybe that is all nothing ever wanted, to be felt, to be known, to remind you that peace is not always comfortable at first. Sometimes peace begins with restlessness, with sitting in the space between things, with letting silence speak. And when it does, you might realize that nothing was never empty. It was always you. Weight of Lightness. Picture this man. He walks through a quiet street just after sunrise. There are no deadlines today, no meetings, no phone calls. The air is soft. The sky is clear. He carries no bag, no to-do list, no rush in his steps. He should feel free. He should feel light. But something feels off. His shoulders are relaxed, yet heavy. His chest is open, yet tight. There is no burden, and still there is weight, not physical, but something else, a strange tension in the ease. This is the weight of lightness. It is the quiet pressure we sometimes feel when life finally becomes calm. When the problems go silent and the noise dies down, you expect joy. You expect peace. But instead, there's an invisible heaviness. You are not worried. You are not sad. You are just floating in a way that feels a little too loose, a little too untied. We often think lightness means relief, that once we let go of stress, we will feel whole again. But lightness, when not rooted, can begin to drift. It can turn into emptiness, into numbness, into a sense that something is missing, even when everything is okay. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox quietly returns. You are aware that life is light right now, that nothing is weighing you down. But you forget how to fully feel that freedom. You forget that lightness is not the end of the journey. It is a space that asks for presence, a space that asks, now that you are free, what will you return to? Sometimes we spend so long fighting for peace that when peace finally arrives, we do not know what to do with it. We are used to tension, used to effort, used to proving, chasing, earning, and when the weight is lifted, a new kind of confusion appears. Who am I without the struggle? What do I do with this open space? Am I wasting it? Am I missing something? So we begin to carry lightness as if it were a new burden. We overthink it. We try to measure it. We question if we deserve it. And in doing so, we add weight to something that was meant to float. The paradox is, lightness is not the absence of weight. It is a different kind of weight, one that does not press down on the body, but on the mind, one that does not exhaust, but unsettles. Because lightness reveals the space we were avoiding, the questions we were too busy to ask, the feelings we buried beneath the rush. You might be on vacation, with time to rest, yet feel uneasy. You might finish a big goal, only to wake up the next day feeling lost. You might end a toxic relationship, but still feel the ache of something missing. Not because something is wrong, but because lightness brings space. And space invites reflection. Lightness is not the final reward. It is the gentle beginning. It says, now that you have room, what will you grow? But we rarely pause to ask. Instead, we try to fill the lightness with plans, with tasks, with distractions, because silence can feel like pressure when you are not used to it. And stillness can feel like falling when you are not grounded. The weight of lightness is not a flaw. It is a signal, a whisper, asking you to come back to presence, to stop expecting the light to entertain you, and instead, to meet it, to breathe with it, to ask, what is here, not what is missing, but what is quietly waiting beneath the surface, because within lightness lives a different kind of truth, not the loud kind that forces change, but the soft kind that opens doors. It reminds you that peace is not passive. It is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of noticing. When you feel the weight of lightness, you are not broken. You are adjusting to a life with less noise, adjusting to a version of yourself that is not running, and that adjustment takes time. Like stepping off a boat after weeks at sea, even on solid ground you feel the sway. Even in freedom you feel the echo of what used to hold you. And that is okay. Let the lightness be awkward at first. Let it feel strange, but do not rush to fix it. Do not rush to fill it. Sit with it. Let it settle. Let your nervous system remember that calm is safe, that joy does not need to be earned, that space does not mean something is wrong, because when you meet lightness with presence, it transforms. It becomes expansion. It becomes clarity. It becomes the silence where your truest voice begins to rise. And slowly, the weight fades, not because it disappears, but because you stop resisting it. You stop turning lightness into a problem, and begin seeing it as a path, not a final destination, but a doorway, to the version of you that lives without fear, to the breath that no longer tightens, to the moment that no longer needs more. So the next time life feels light but you feel heavy, pause. Place your hand on your chest. Feel the breath move in and out. And whisper to yourself, this is new, and it is okay. I do not need to fill it. I only need to feel it. Because the weight of lightness is not asking you to carry anything. It is asking you to let go. And remember, peace is not loud, but it is real. And it begins exactly where you are. The search for what you are. Picture this boy. He is standing in front of a foggy mirror just after a warm shower. The steam has blurred everything. He stares at his reflection, but all he sees is a shadowy outline. He slowly wipes the glass with his palm. His face appears, but something about it feels unfamiliar. He tilts his head, studies his own eyes, and quietly wonders, who am I really? This is the beginning of a very old journey, the search for what you are. It does not begin in a classroom. It does not begin with books. It begins in moments like this, quiet, personal, often strange, moments where you pause, even for a second, and something deep inside you whispers, what am I? Not what do I do? Not what do others see? But what am I underneath all of it? At first, the question feels exciting, like a mystery that leads somewhere meaningful. You look at your achievements, your memories, your emotions. You ask your friends what they think of you. You compare. You reflect. You gather stories. You create definitions. But no matter how many answers you collect, the question still returns. Not loudly, but gently, always in the background. Asking again, is that really all you are? You try to answer it through roles. I am a student, a sister, a thinker, a creator, but roles can change. And when they do, the sense of identity slips. You try to answer it through personality. I am kind. I am curious. I am anxious. But those two shift depending on the moment. Sometimes you are strong. Sometimes you are tired. Sometimes you feel wise. Sometimes you feel lost. So the ground beneath the answers keeps moving. And this is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold. You are aware that you exist. You feel it clearly. But you forget to notice that your identity is not as solid as it seems. You forget that most of the time, what you call yourself is just a thought, a label, a habit of mind. And habits are not truth. They are just patterns. So you begin to wonder, what if I am not the name I respond to? What if I am not the story I have told myself for years? What if I am not the image others see? You begin to look deeper, not in books, but in silence, in presence. You sit in a quiet room with no distractions, and you ask the question, again, what am I? Not with stress, not with pressure, but with deep curiosity. And what you find is not an answer, but a space, a silence that does not explain, but also does not confuse. It just is. You begin to feel that what you are is not a thing. It is not an object. It cannot be held. It cannot be described. Because whatever you describe, you are still the one doing the describing. If you say, I am my body, you are noticing the body. If you say, I am my thoughts, you are watching the thoughts. If you say, I am my feelings, you are aware of the feelings. So then, who is the one noticing all of this? That is the question that ends the search, not with a final answer, but with a shift, from trying to define yourself to simply being yourself, from collecting identities to resting in awareness, from asking what you are to living as what you are. Because what you truly are cannot be caught. It can only be lived. It can only be felt. Like the sky, you can describe it, you can measure it, you can point at it, but the sky itself cannot be boxed. You are the same. You are the space in which everything happens. You are not the cloud. You are the sky holding the cloud. You are not the wave. You are the ocean that carries it. And the moment you stop chasing identity like a prize, the peace begins to settle. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer need to find the perfect word. You no longer panic when others misunderstand you, because what you are is not fragile. It is not lost. It is simply quiet, and always here. The search for what you are ends when you realize. You have never been the seeker. You have always been the awareness behind the seeking, and that awareness does not need to become anything. It already is, still, clear, whole. So the next time the question rises, what am I? Smile softly. Feel the breath moving through you. Feel the silence inside the question. Do not answer it, just be with it. Because the search was never about finding a label. It was about returning to the truth that needs no label. The truth that cannot be spoken, but can always be known, in stillness, in silence, in the quiet space of being, the doubt in certainty. Picture this man. He stands at a podium, speaking to a crowd with confidence in his voice. His back is straight, his eyes are clear. Every word he says sounds firm, complete, solid. The people listen, they nod, they take notes. But deep inside, hidden beneath the voice and the posture, something flickers. A small ripple, a quiet question. It is not loud enough to stop him. But it is there. A feeling that asks, what if I am wrong? This is the doubt in certainty. It is the soft voice that lives inside even the strongest words. It is the feeling that lingers behind decisions that looked clear from the outside. We often think of certainty as strength, as clarity, as power, and doubt as weakness, as confusion, as a problem to fix. But sometimes, doubt is not confusion. Sometimes, doubt is wisdom, the kind that sits in silence and watches, the kind that questions even when the answers seem obvious. You may be sure of your path, but still feel the doubt, not because you are lost, but because you are human. Doubt does not mean you are wrong. It means you are awake. It means you are listening. It means you are still willing to learn. This is where the awareness, amnesia paradox begins to rise. You become aware of what you believe. You stand by it. But you slowly forget the part of you that once questioned it, the part of you that was open, curious, soft. You become sure but also rigid, and in that certainty, you begin to lose something. The openness, the humility, the quiet space that makes room for new understanding. When you hold certainty too tightly, it becomes armor, but armor, over time, becomes weight. And under that weight, the doubt begins to breathe again, not to destroy what you know, but to remind you you are not finished, you are still unfolding. Think about a mountain climber who reaches the top. They stretch their arms wide. They feel proud, but then they look around, and something stirs. Was this really the only path? Was there a better way? Could they have seen something else on the other side? That is not regret. That is depth. That is the echo of the doubt inside the certainty, not to tear it down, but to keep it honest, because certainty without doubt becomes ego. But certainty that includes doubt becomes wisdom. It becomes flexible, alive, true. Sometimes we confuse loudness with truth, the loudest voice in the room, the clearest opinion, the strongest belief. But truth is not always loud. It is often quiet. It often comes with hesitation, with pause, with the courage to say, I am still learning, even now, especially now. The doubt and certainty is not there to undo you. It is there to deepen you, to make sure that what you know is still rooted, still real, still alive. Because some certainties die quietly inside the mind. They become rules you follow without knowing why, traditions you carry without feeling them, beliefs you defend even when your heart has already let go, and the doubt appears, not to destroy, but to ask, are you still here? Are you still connected? Do you still believe what you say? Or have you fallen asleep inside your own story? That is the power of doubt. It wakes you up. It taps your shoulder. It invites you back into presence, into honesty. It does not ask for full answers, only real questions. Imagine a teacher who has taught the same lesson for years. One day, a student asks something unexpected. The teacher pauses. They do not rush to respond. They smile and say softly, I am not sure. Let me think about that. And in that moment, the room feels more alive, more real, because the doubt brought presence. It brought humility. It brought depth. This is the kind of doubt you carry not in fear but in love. Love for truth, love for clarity, love for growth. You can still stand firm, still speak clearly, still live with purpose, but underneath it all, there is room for change, for softness, for expansion. The doubt and certainty is not a flaw. It is a quiet sign that you are still breathing, still listening, still evolving. So the next time you feel it, that quiet question rising in the middle of your certainty, do not push it away. Do not silence it. Do not label it weakness. Sit with it. Let it ask. Let it open a window in your mind. Let it bring fresh air to what you believe. And remember, the strongest trees still bend with the wind. The The clearest rivers still curve with the earth, and the wisest minds still wonder, still doubt, still grow, because truth is not a wall, it is a door, and doubt is the key that reminds you there is always more to see. The paradox of letting go. Picture this woman. She is holding a paper lantern by the riverbank at dusk. Her fingers grip the thin wooden frame, soft and trembling. Inside the lantern is a small candle, already lit. The wind is calm. The sky is turning violet. Around her, others are already releasing their lanterns. One by one, they float into the water, drifting slowly, gently, glowing against the dark. She watches, takes a breath, and then hesitates. Something inside her wants to hold on. Not because the lantern is heavy, but because letting go means something real is ending. This is the paradox of letting go. It sounds like peace, like relief, like the final step of healing. We are told to let go of the past, of pain, of fear, of expectations. And in theory, it sounds simple. You just stop holding, you just release. But in practice, letting go often feels heavier than holding on. The grip is familiar, the weight is known. It becomes part of you, and when you loosen that grip, even slightly, the emptiness it leaves behind can feel louder than the pain ever did. Because letting go is not just about freedom. It is also about loss. It is about stepping into a space where the old no longer follows you, but the new has not yet arrived. And that space, that soft in-between, is where the paradox begins. Letting go promises peace. But first, it asks for presence. Real presence. The kind that requires you to feel every part of what you are releasing. Not numb it, not rush through it, but truly feel it. And this is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to show itself. You are aware of what you want to let go of. You say the words. You even believe them. But you forget that letting go is not just an action. It is an opening. It is not just about dropping what hurts. It is about making space for what you have not yet imagined. Letting go is not a final step. It is the beginning of something invisible, and the invisible is what scares us most. We would rather hold on to something broken than face the silence of what might come next. Because holding on, even to pain, gives us something to grasp. It gives shape to our story. But letting go, it empties the page and invites us to meet ourselves again, without labels, without old echoes, without the illusion of control. Think about someone holding a balloon in the wind. They could let go at any time. But something about the string between their fingers makes them feel connected, even if the balloon is tugging, even if it is tiring. That string becomes a thread of identity, and releasing it feels like losing part of themselves. That is what happens with old stories, old relationships, old versions of who we thought we were. We keep the string because it reminds us of who we used to be. But peace does not come from keeping the string. Peace comes from the space that opens when it is gone. But that peace is not immediate. It does not flood in all at once. It drips in, slowly, with silence, with breath, with tears that come without reason, and that is okay. Because the paradox of letting go is this: to truly let go, you must first hold with honesty. You must face what you are carrying, not with blame, not with shame, but with love, with understanding, with a gentle gaze that says, "Thank you for what you gave me, even if it hurt, even if it did not last, even if it was never mine." You meet it, you feel it, and then, slowly, you begin to open your hand, not with force, but with trust. Letting go is not forgetting. It is remembering with softness. Letting go is not losing. It is releasing the need to keep everything the same. Letting go is not weakness. It is courage, the quiet kind, the kind that does not scream or shout, but whispers, "I am ready to move forward, even if I do not know where the path leads." And that is the truth we often forget. Letting go is not about having a new plan. It is about creating space for one to appear. It is about stepping into the unknown with open arms, knowing that the weight you carried does not define you. It only shaped the path that brought you here. So the next time you feel the resistance to let go, do not judge it. Sit with it. Ask it why it is still holding on. Listen. Maybe it is afraid. Maybe it is confused. Maybe it is just tired. Hold that feeling gently. Do not rush it. Let it know you are here. You are not trying to erase the past. You are trying to return to the present. And the present is where the healing begins. Not by forgetting what was, but by no longer needing it to stay. Letting go is a quiet revolution, not against the past, but for the future. Not as a rejection, but as a return to yourself, to now, to what is real. And when the moment comes, when your hand opens, when the string falls away, when the lantern leaves your fingers and floats gently into the dark, you might feel sadness. But beneath that sadness, you will feel something else, something softer, something lighter, and you will realize you were never letting go to lose. You were letting go to begin. The mind that watches itself think. Picture this boy. He is sitting on a bench at the edge of a quiet park. His hands are still. His phone is in his pocket. There is no one around. Birds move softly in the trees. Leaves rustle above him, but his eyes are fixed on nothing. He is not trying to focus. He is not trying to think. And yet, thoughts begin to rise, one after another. Some loud, some quiet, some strange. He does not chase them. He does not push them away. He just watches, not with judgment, not with emotion, just awareness, like a sky watching clouds pass. This is the mind that watches itself think. It is not a special skill. It is not a meditation technique. It is something every human can do, but most of the time, we forget. We live inside our thoughts like actors in a play who do not know it is a play. We believe every line. We follow every scene. We react, respond, repeat. But somewhere deep inside, beyond the noise, there is a quiet space, a watcher, a soft presence. Not thinking, but noticing. Not reacting, but observing. And when we drop into that space, the mind begins to reveal itself. You begin to notice how thoughts appear on their own. You do not plan them. They just come. You are sitting quietly and suddenly a memory returns. A face. A sentence someone said years ago. A worry about tomorrow. A craving. A judgment. All rising like waves. Not because you asked. Just because that is what the mind does. And for the first time, you are not lost in it. You are watching it happen. Not from distance, but from presence. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to unfold. You are always aware, but you forget to notice that awareness. You become identified with the voice inside your head. The one that says, I am not good enough. The one that says, I hope they like me. The one that says, I should be doing more. And you begin to believe that voice is who you are. But you are not the voice. You are the one hearing it. That changes everything. It changes how you feel your emotions. You are still angry, but you are watching anger move through you like a storm across water. You are still anxious, but now you see anxiety instead of being trapped inside it. You are still hopeful, but now you can feel the shape of hope without becoming blind to it. You are no longer the weather. You are the sky holding it all. And that sky does not need to change. It just needs to be noticed. The mind that watches itself think is not cold. It is not detached. It is deeply alive. It feels everything, but from stillness. It listens to every story the mind tells, but with gentle curiosity. It does not argue with the thoughts. It does not try to shut them down. It just watches. And the watching itself becomes the shift. Because when you see your thoughts clearly, they begin to lose their power over you. They become movements, not truth, patterns, not identity. You begin to notice how certain thoughts repeat, how the same fear shows up in new clothes, how the same story keeps returning no matter how many times you solve it, and you begin to smile, not because you have fixed your mind, but because you are finally seeing it, like watching the sea. You do not need to stop the waves, you just need to learn how to float. Imagine someone sitting by a river. Leaves float by, some fast, some slow, some sinking, some spinning in circles. That is your mind. The river flows, but you are not in the river. You are on the bank, watching. That is freedom. Freedom is not controlling your thoughts. It is no longer being controlled by them. And that freedom begins with a pause, a breath, a single moment of seeing, where you go, oh, there is that thought again, that old fear, that old belief, that familiar story. You do not fight it, you do not fix it, you just watch. And in watching, something opens. A space between you and the thought, a space where peace begins, where choice begins, where presence lives. Because once you see a thought as a thought, you are no longer trapped by it. You are free to respond instead of react, free to let it pass instead of holding on, free to return to silence without fear. The mind that watches itself think does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be honest. Honest enough to admit, I do not know why this thought is here. Honest enough to say, I do not need to fix this feeling right now. Honest enough to trust this too will pass. And it will. Every thought passes. Every feeling fades. But the one watching, the awareness behind it all, that stays. That is what you are. Not the thought, not the reaction, but the seeing, the knowing, the presence. So the next time your mind feels busy, do not try to silence it. Do not panic. Just pause, breathe, and watch. Watch the thought rise. Watch it move. Watch it fade. And remember, you are not the story. You are the space the story passes through. And in that space, there is peace. Not because everything is quiet, but because you are finally listening, without fear, without judgment, just presence, just breath, just being. The answer that questions you. Imagine this man. He sits in a dimly lit room, staring at the last line of a book he just finished. The story was deep, complex, emotional, but it ended with one single sentence. A sentence that was not dramatic, not poetic, just clear, like truth in its purest form. He closes the book slowly, and for a moment he feels something settle in him, like a puzzle piece finally fitting. But then, something strange happens. His breath pauses, his heart moves differently. That one answer, instead of bringing peace, stirs something deeper. It opens a new space inside him, and that space begins to ask, are you living by this truth? This is the answer that questions you. It is not loud, not forceful. It does not arrive like a solution that ends everything. It arrives softly, and then instead of finishing the search, it begins a new one, not outward, but inward. We often seek answers like keys, to open something, to solve something, to close the loop. We want to reach a point where we can finally say, now I know, now I can rest, now I am done. But the deepest answers do not end the journey. They deepen it. They do not give you control. They give you clarity. And with that clarity comes responsibility. You realize that the answer is not just for understanding, it is for transformation. And transformation asks, are you willing to live this? The awareness-amnesia paradox begins to form here. You become aware of something important, a truth that resonates in your chest, a realization that cuts through the fog, but you forget to notice what that truth is asking from you. You hold the answer gently, like a treasure. But you do not always let it shape you. You think the search is over, but really it has just become real. Because now the question is not, do you know? The question is, now that you know, what will you do? That is what makes the answer so powerful. It turns the light back on you. It asks, will you walk with what you have found? Will you change how you speak? Will you forgive where you said you could not? Will you pause where you used to rush? Will you soften where you always hardened? The answer is not a reward. It is a mirror. And the reflection it offers is not always comfortable, because now you see yourself more clearly, not through blame, not through judgment, but through presence. Imagine a woman who realizes that she has been pushing herself too hard for years. She reads a single line in a journal that says, "Rest is not laziness." She feels something release in her body. It is the answer she has been waiting for. But now comes the real part. The question rises. Will she slow down? Will she say no to one more project? Will she breathe when her old patterns want to prove? The answer is now questioning her, not to trap her, but to free her. Because an answer without action is a decoration, but an answer that leads to a shift, that is awakening. And awakening does not come with comfort. It comes with quiet responsibility. Not to be perfect, but to be honest. The paradox is, we want answers to give us peace, but sometimes peace does not come from knowing. It comes from doing, from embodying, from becoming. You realize that truth is not just something you hear, it is something you carry. And the weight of it is not heavy, it is sacred, because it reminds you that life is not something to be solved, it is something to be lived. Thought by thought, step by step. With every answer, a new question appears. Are you listening? Are you growing? Are you honoring what you now understand? That is where the real shift begins. The moment when insight becomes practice, when knowing becomes being, when your answers stop sitting quietly in books and begin to shape how you walk through the world. And you might feel resistance, you might feel fear, because living the answer often means letting go of what came before, letting go of the story that no longer fits, letting go of the version of you that used to be blind, and stepping into something unknown. But that unknown is not empty. It is full of potential, full of breath, full of life. You begin to see that every real answer does not end in a period. It ends in a pause, followed by a question mark, not one that doubts, but one that invites. So the next time you find an answer that feels true, do not stop there. Ask, what does this truth ask from me? Not just what it means, but what it wants to become through you. Because truth is not a possession, it is a process. And you are not just the seeker, you are the space where the answer becomes a path. Let it question you, let it shape you, let it move you, not out of pressure, but out of presence. Because when the answer begins to live through your breath, your actions, your stillness, it no longer belongs to the page, it becomes who you are. And then, even your silence will speak it. The still storm within. Picture this woman. She is sitting by the window with a warm drink in her hand. Her home is quiet. The wind outside is soft. There is no traffic, no noise, no rush. From the outside, everything looks calm. Her eyes are steady. Her body is still. But inside her, a storm is moving. Thoughts race through her mind, even though her face stays composed. Emotions twist gently behind her silence. She is not crying. She is not panicking. But something inside her is loud, not in volume, but in presence. Something she cannot name. Something that does not show itself on the surface. This is the still storm within. It is the quiet turmoil that lives inside a calm face. The invisible movement beneath stillness. We often think storms are loud, that they come with tears and anger and action. But some storms do not make a sound. They live inside the chest, in the way the breath tightens, in the way the thoughts loop, in the way you smile but your heart feels heavy. It is easy to miss, even to yourself, because you are not falling apart. You are still functioning, still walking, still replying to messages. But inside, something is stirring, and you do not know why. It is not dramatic, but it is real. and it follows you. You try to meditate, but your mind keeps spinning. You try to rest, but sleep feels distant. You talk to someone, but the words feel separate from the feeling. You are not broken. You are just carrying a storm that learned how to stay quiet. This is where the awareness amnesia paradox begins to appear. You are aware of your stillness. You feel the silence around you, but you forget to look inward. You forget that even when your outside life is calm, your inner world may still be moving, and that movement is not a problem. It is an invitation to turn gently toward yourself, to listen without judgment, to feel without labeling. The still storm within does not need to be solved. It needs to be seen, because sometimes the pain is not asking for an answer. It is asking for attention. And attention begins when you stop pretending you are fine just because you are functioning. The storm may be quiet, but it speaks. It speaks through the way you avoid certain thoughts, through the sudden tiredness you cannot explain, through the moments of numbness that show up between tasks. It says, there is something here you have not fully felt, and that something is waiting. Not to hurt you, but to release itself through you. Storms are not mistakes. They are energy, built up over time, from unspoken words, from long silences, from the days you stayed strong when you wanted to fall, from the smiles you wore when your heart was aching, and now the storm is asking for space, not to break you, but to soften you, to bring you back into wholeness. You might feel the urge to distract yourself, to stay busy, to keep the silence filled. But the storm is not trying to ruin your peace. It is trying to return you to it. Because real peace is not the absence of storms. It is the presence that can hold them. Imagine the sky during a thunderstorm. The clouds move fast. The wind howls. But high above, in the upper layers of the sky, everything is still, calm, unmoved. You are the same. Your thoughts may spin. Your emotions may rise. But beneath all of it, there is a stillness, a witnessing space, a quiet ground, and the moment you drop into that space, the storm begins to shift, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer carrying itself alone. You are with it now, breathing with it, holding it, not fixing it, just staying. And in that staying, the storm begins to slow. It begins to speak more clearly. It begins to dissolve, because storms are not meant to last forever. They rise, they swirl, and then they pass, but only if you let them move through, only if you stop trying to outrun them. The still storm within is not your enemy. It is your body trying to tell you the truth, and truth does not always arrive in words. Sometimes it arrives as pressure in the chest, as a tear that forms for no reason, as a moment of silence that suddenly feels too loud. That is not weakness, that is honesty, that is presence rising from within. So the next time you feel still on the outside but storming on the inside, pause, breathe deeply. Place a hand on your chest and whisper to yourself, it is okay to feel this, even if I do not understand it, even if it does not go away right now. I am here. And I will not leave myself, because the storm only grows louder when it is ignored. But when it is met with kindness, it begins to turn into something else, into clarity, into softness, into truth. You do not need to make it go away. You only need to make space for it. And trust that even in the middle of a storm, you can be still, not by force, but by presence. Because presence does not fight the storm, it holds it. And holding is how healing begins. The illusion that grounds reality. Imagine this man. He walks the same road every day to reach his favorite tea shop. It is a narrow path, with a small tree leaning toward the sidewalk and a painted wall that has faded over the years. Each morning, the world feels predictable, familiar. The same faces, the same weather, the same tea, served in the same chipped cup. And somehow, this sameness comforts him. It makes him feel safe, secure, rooted. But one morning, the wall is repainted, the tree is cut down, the shop owner is absent, the tea tastes slightly different, and something unsettles in him. Not because something went wrong, but because the illusion that held his world together had shifted. And the moment it did, the ground beneath his feet no longer felt steady. This is the illusion that grounds reality. It is the quiet pattern we all build around us. A rhythm, a belief, a story. We tell ourselves, this is how things are. This is who I am. This is what life means. And for a while, it holds. It gives structure to the chaos. It gives shape to the unknown. But underneath, reality is always moving, always changing. And the illusion we built begins to crack, not to destroy us, but to show us that our safety was never in the pattern. It was in our awareness of the pattern. We need illusions. They help us navigate life. They help us find direction. They help us stay sane in a world that can feel too big, too fast, too uncertain. But when we hold on to those illusions too tightly, we forget they were never the full truth. They were just placeholders, gentle outlines drawn around the unknown. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to take form. You are aware of your world, your habits, your identity. But you forget that much of it is built from assumptions, from stories you learned, from conclusions you drew when you were too young to question, from thoughts that felt safe to believe. You walk through life not questioning the floor beneath you, but sometimes life changes the floor, and when it does, you feel it, that strange shake, that confusion, that pull toward the question, what is real? What was always real? And what did I just imagine to feel okay? That is not a breakdown. It is an awakening. Because reality was never the fixed thing. It was the awareness behind it. Imagine looking at clouds on a still afternoon. You can see a shape, maybe it looks like a bird, or a mountain, or a face, but you know the shape is not real. It is your mind projecting order onto the formless, and still, you enjoy it. Still, it gives you a moment of connection. That is what illusions are. Shapes on the sky of our awareness. Temporary. Soft. Helpful. But not permanent. The problem comes when we forget that we are the ones shaping them. We say, I am this kind of person. We say, this is how people are. We say, life should be this way. And slowly, those shapes harden. They become beliefs. They become walls. And when life does not match the shape, we feel lost. But what if that feeling is not the problem? What if that feeling is the invitation? An invitation to see that your reality is not falling apart. It is being seen more clearly. It is asking you to look beneath the illusion, not to reject it, not to destroy it, but to understand it, to thank it, and to move through it. Because real grounding does not come from things staying the same. It comes from knowing that even as things change, you can stay present, you can stay soft, you can stay open. When a relationship ends, when a job changes, when a belief crumbles, you do not disappear. You remain, not as the illusion, but as the space behind it, the space that notices the change, the space that allows new truth to rise. Because truth is not always solid. Sometimes it is water. Sometimes it is mist. And your ability to stay with it without needing it to always feel safe is what brings peace. Not control, but acceptance. Not holding tight, but letting flow. That is how the illusion begins to loosen. Not with fear, but with trust. You start to see that you can still love people even if they change. That you can still find meaning even if your story shifts. That you can still breathe even when the future is unclear. Because your grounding does not live in the illusion. It lives in your awareness of it. It lives in your presence within it. And when you see that clearly, something opens. A freedom, a breath, a softness that says, I do not need to know exactly what life is. I just need to be here with it, now, fully. And in that fullness, the ground beneath you returns, not because it was fixed, but because you no longer need it to be. So the next time your reality begins to wobble, when the patterns stop working, when the story no longer fits, pause, breathe, and ask, what illusion was I holding that made me feel safe? And what truth is now asking to rise? You do not need to abandon everything. You just need to see more clearly, because the illusion is not the enemy. It is the beginning, and reality is not what you believed. It is what you become aware of once the belief fades. And in that awareness, you find your way again, not through the shape, but through the space, the forgotten truth memory. Picture this girl. She is walking through an old library with tall wooden shelves that stretch up beyond her reach. The air smells of paper and time. She is not searching for anything specific, just moving slowly between rows. Her fingers glide along the spines of books, each one holding stories she has never read. And then something happens. A small green book with no title catches her attention. She pulls it out. The cover is worn. The page is yellow. She opens it, and on the very first page, she reads something strange, a sentence that feels oddly familiar. Not because she has seen it before, but because she feels like she has always known it. Something stirs in her chest. She turns the page. Another line, even softer this time, almost like a whisper. And with each sentence, something hidden begins to wake inside her. A memory, but not of a place, or a person, or an event. A memory of something deeper. A truth she did not learn, but had forgotten. This is the forgotten truth memory. It is not the kind of memory that lives in your brain. It is not made of facts, or dates, or names. It is the memory that lives in the heart, the kind that does not come from the past, but from a place beyond time. We all carry it, but we forget it. We forget not because we are careless, but because we grow up in a world that teaches us to focus only on what can be seen, what can be named, what can be explained. And so, the deeper knowing gets buried. Slowly, silently, replaced by noise, by roles, by instructions, by other people's truths. You do not even notice it is gone, until one day, something quiet finds you. A line in a poem, a sudden silence in the middle of a busy day, a breeze that feels like a voice, and you pause, not because you understand it, but because you feel it. Something in you says, I know this, not in words, but in being. It is like standing in front of a painting that speaks to your soul, though you have never seen it before, or hearing a melody that makes you cry, though you do not know why, or walking into a place you have never been, and suddenly feeling like you are home. That is the forgotten truth memory waking up. It does not scream. It does not rush. It unfolds like mist over water. Soft, slow, real. And when it does, the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to fade. Because you start to remember something you did not know you had forgotten. A feeling of wholeness. A sense of being complete before becoming anything. A knowing that you are not separate from life, but part of it. Always have been. Not because someone told you, but because your own heart knows. Like a child who sees the moon for the first time and feels wonder without needing words. Like someone sitting by the ocean and suddenly understanding something wordless about their life. These are not new truths. They are ancient truths returning. Truths that were never lost, just covered by stress, by comparison, by survival. By trying too hard to be someone, you forgot that you already are. The forgotten truth is not about adding something to your life. It is about peeling back what never belonged. What you thought you needed to become. What you believed you had to prove. It is about the memory of your inner stillness. The quiet center that does not move when life moves. That watches. That listens. That breathes, even in silence. And it often returns in moments you do not expect. Moments of grief, when everything else fades and only the essential remains. Moments of awe, when words fall away and only presence is left. Moments of aloneness, when the world is far and yet you feel closer to yourself than ever. This memory does not offer answers. It offers depth. It asks nothing from you, except your presence. Except your honesty. It says, sit with me, not to do something, but to remember, you are not broken, you are not late, you are not behind, you are here, and that is already everything. But the mind will resist this. It will want proof. It will want logic. It will ask, how do I know this is true? And the answer is simple. You do not need to know. You only need to feel. Because the forgotten truth cannot be argued. It can only be recognized, like recognizing your own reflection after years of not looking closely. You will not need to be convinced. You will simply remember. And in that remembering, something will soften. The voice that always says you are not enough will quiet. The fear that you are missing out will fade. The push to chase meaning outside yourself will ease. And in that space, you will begin to live differently. Not with more answers, but with deeper questions. Not with more control, but with more trust. Not with louder thoughts, but with quieter knowing. The girl in the library closes the green book. She places it back on the shelf, not because she is done, but because something in her has already shifted. She walks out into the world, same city, same sky, but now she walks with something inside her that feels a little more awake, a little more real. She cannot explain it, but she does not need to. She is remembering not the past, but herself. Picture her walking down the library steps now, the world around her unchanged, but her inner world trembling in a quiet way. The sky stretches the same way it did yesterday. The people pass with the same speed, but the air feels different, thinner, softer, as though something invisible is watching her breathe. She does not rush. She does not smile. She only walks with that lingering hum inside her. Not quite joy, not quite sadness, just a presence she cannot name. She does not tell anyone what happened. Not because it is a secret, but because it is too delicate for words. She goes home, sits in her room, the clock ticks, the floor creaks. She hears everything now, even the smallest sounds. And then her thoughts try to return. The usual thoughts, the schedule, the worries, the little voices that ask if she is doing enough, being enough. But this time, she does not follow them. She watches. Like someone watching leaves float past in a stream, she sees the thought and lets it pass. She remembers the words in the book. Not exactly. But the feeling that something inside her already knows, already trusts, already is, and something unexpected happens. Tears form, not from pain, but from recognition. Because sometimes remembering what you truly are is overwhelming, like waking up in a room filled with sunlight after living in shadows. The brightness does not hurt, but it asks you to see everything now, even the parts you left behind. She closes her eyes, and the memory deepens. She remembers being a child, sitting on the ground, drawing on paper without thinking, talking to herself softly, laughing at things that made no sense. There was no pressure then, no fear of being wrong, no urge to be more than what she was. She did not know the word truth, but she was living in it. And then slowly, as life continued, the outer world taught her other stories. That being right matters more than being curious. That success means approval. That silence must be filled. That softness is weakness. She did not stop being herself. She just covered it, layer by layer, word by word. And now the layers are peeling. Not all at once, but gently. Truth does not return with noise. It returns like breath, soft, repeating, always there. She sits longer, no need to speak, no need to explain. There is a deep remembering now, not of events, but of presence, of being here, before the roles, before the masks, before the names. And in this stillness she notices something else, that this truth is not personal. It does not belong to her alone. it belongs to all. Because the forgotten truth memory is not an individual experience, it is shared. It is the thread that runs through all of us, the soft voice behind every silent question, the light that flickers beneath every anxious heart. It says you are not separate, you are not lost, you are not broken, you have only been distracted, and now you are returning, not backwards, but inward. There is no grand awakening, no loud realization, just the soft returning of eyes to the mirror that does not lie, the mirror that reflects without opinion. She opens her eyes. The room has not changed, but she has. And with that shift comes something deeper than comfort, a kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances, not joy, not escape, but rootedness. She feels her breath, her heartbeat, her feet on the ground. Everything is simple, and in that simplicity, everything is whole. Later she walks outside. The streets are busy again. A car honks, a child cries. Life continues, unaware of the truth she touched, but she is not waiting for life to match her stillness anymore. She carries it with her. She is not trying to fix the world, only to walk through it, remembering what most forget. And in that remembering, she finds strength. Not the strength to fight, but the strength to remain soft. To see the world as it is flawed, noisy, distracted, and still remember the silence beneath it. Still remember the light that never left. The forgotten truth is not something you carry. It is what carries you, always has, even when you forgot, even when you doubted, even when you tried to become something else. It was there, watching, waiting, like the stillness behind the movement, like the clarity behind the thoughts, like the memory behind the mind. And now it is rising again, ready when you are. She begins to live differently now, not in ways the world might notice, not in dramatic decisions or new routines, but in quiet shifts, subtle pauses, a deeper breath before reacting, a longer gaze before responding. The truth she remembered is not something she can show anyone, but it begins to show through her. She walks with more softness, speaks with more space between her words. She no longer rushes to fill silence. She no longer panics when things feel uncertain, because the memory inside her, the one she found again, reminds her that nothing is truly missing. Even in confusion, something real remains. There is a kind of grace in this state, not a spiritual performance, not an effort to be peaceful, just a gentle honesty with herself. When fear rises, she watches it. When doubt speaks, she listens but does not obey. When the old voices try to convince her she needs to be more, do more, prove more, she smiles, not to mock them, but to meet them kindly, like you would meet an old friend who forgot who you are now. The truth does not make her perfect, it makes her real. And realness is not always easy. Sometimes it aches. Sometimes it brings tears that have waited years to fall. Sometimes it brings long, quiet nights where you meet yourself without distraction. But even in those moments, she no longer feels lost. She knows now that being with herself is not emptiness, it is returning, and what she returns to is not a version of herself, not a memory of childhood, but something older, something wordless, a silence behind all identities. It watches without name. It breathes without effort. It waits without time. That presence, once forgotten, now becomes her compass. And like all true compasses, it does not give directions. It gives alignment. It does not tell her what to do. It helps her remember who she is while doing it. Now she can say no without guilt. Now she can say yes without fear. Now she can feel joy without needing a reason, and pain without needing a cure, because she no longer sees experience as something to fix, but something to feel. That is what truth does when it is remembered. It softens resistance. It deepens presence. It changes how you see the same life. The world outside her window still moves with chaos. People still rush, still argue, still forget. But she sees it differently now. Not because it changed, but because she is no longer looking through the same fog. And in this clarity, she finds something unexpected: compassion. For others, for herself. Because once you remember the truth inside you, you begin to see that same truth in others, even when they forget, even when they lash out, even when they cannot hear their own silence yet. You stop trying to wake them up and start choosing to stay awake around them. You stop waiting for others to reflect your peace and begin becoming the reflection yourself. That is how remembering becomes healing, not through effort, but through being. She begins writing again, not to impress, not to teach, but to stay close to the feeling. Each word is a soft return. Each sentence, a small mirror, not for others to read, but for her to remember. Because the memory, though strong, can still fade, not because it disappears, but because life is loud. And forgetting is easy, so she builds small rituals to return: a quiet walk each morning, a breath before checking her phone, a candle lit with no purpose. These moments are not distractions. They are doorways back to the stillness, to the presence that never asks for anything, yet offers everything. One evening, she looks at the stars and feels something familiar rise again. Not a thought, not a word, just a warmth, a knowing. And this time it does not surprise her. It feels natural now, like an old friend sitting beside her. They do not speak, they just sit, and together they remember. They remember what it feels like to be alive without performing, to exist without explanation, to breathe without resistance. The truth she once forgot now moves through her quietly, not needing validation, not needing to be expressed, just living, softly, as the ground beneath her steps. She is no longer chasing. She is no longer waiting. She is simply walking, and the walk itself is enough. The puzzle with no missing piece. Imagine this man. He sits on the floor of his small apartment with a jigsaw puzzle spread out in front of him. The evening light pours through the window. A soft breeze carries the sound of birds outside. He has been working on the puzzle for hours, carefully turning each piece, searching for shapes, matching edges. The picture on the box shows a quiet mountain scene, a lake, a cabin, trees leaning into their reflection. Piece by piece he places them down, and slowly the picture comes together. But as he nears the end, a familiar thought returns. The same one that shows up in moments like this. A quiet question in the background of his mind. What if one piece is missing? It does not matter that every other piece is in place, that the picture is almost whole. The thought begins to pull at him. He checks under the table, looks around the room, counts the pieces again. His hands move faster now, not with calm, but with tension. He cannot rest unless it is complete. He cannot feel peace unless it is whole. But the puzzle is not missing a piece. He just cannot believe that. Not yet. This is the puzzle with no missing piece. It is not just about a game. It is about how we see ourselves, how we live, how we search through life, believing that something is not yet here. Something is not quite enough. We walk through our days trying to finish an image we think is incomplete. We look for the final piece in other people, in more success, in deeper relationships, in approval, in answers. And even when things fall into place, the mind still whispers, "Is this it? Surely something is still missing." But what if that whisper is not truth? What if it is a habit, a deeply learned habit of chasing the final piece, even when the picture is already complete? This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox gently enters. You are aware of what you have. A life, a body, a breath. You know you are here. You know you have come far. But you forget that you are not incomplete. You forget that the feeling of something missing is not always a message sometimes. It is just an echo. an echo from years of being told you have to earn your worth. That wholeness is somewhere ahead. That happiness is a future reward. So you keep looking. You search the floor for a piece that was never missing. And in the search, you overlook what is already here. The irony is this: the feeling of missing something is often strongest when you are closest to the truth. The moment just before peace arrives is when the doubt gets loudest, because the mind fears stillness, and it fears the end of searching. It does not know how to live in the space of enough, but the heart knows, the body knows, the breath knows. That wholeness is not earned, it is remembered. And you do not remember it through thinking, you remember it through being. Like watching the sun rise without needing to explain it, like hearing your favorite song and letting it move through you, like sitting quietly and realizing you are already home. The puzzle of your life was never missing a piece, it was always whole. But the eyes were trained to see the gaps, to look for the flaw, to chase the next thing, to believe that contentment means giving up. But contentment is not giving up, it is waking up to the truth that right now you are not waiting for anything. You are breathing. You are feeling. You are here. And here is enough. Even if not everything is perfect, even if you still feel fear, even if you are still healing, because wholeness does not mean finished, it means full. Full with all that you are. Full with all that you have been. Full with every breath that brought you to this exact moment. No piece missing, no part lost. Just a mind learning to see differently. Like the man with the puzzle, you might need to pause, to sit back, to soften the search, and to let your eyes adjust. Because when you stop rushing to find the missing piece, you might realize it was already there. Just not where you were looking, not in the next goal, not in someone else, but in the quiet space between thoughts. In the stillness behind the breath, you might even smile. Not because the picture changed, but because you finally saw it as it is, complete. You do not have to fix yourself to be worthy of rest. You do not have to finish healing to be deserving of peace. You do not need one more piece to be enough. You are not a puzzle waiting to be solved. You are the whole picture, already here. So the next time you feel that quiet pull, the feeling that something is still missing, pause, breathe, and ask gently, what if this feeling is just an old story? What if the missing piece is not something to find, but something to stop looking for? And in that pause, in that breath, you might feel it, the soft remembering that there is no piece to chase. There's only this moment. And in this moment, you are already whole, the awareness that dissolves awareness. Imagine this man. He is sitting quietly on a rooftop just before dawn. The city below is still asleep. No footsteps, no traffic, only the slow shift of night into early light. His eyes are half closed. He is not meditating in the usual way. He is not following his breath, not repeating a mantra. He is simply sitting, letting the sky open above him and the silence settle around him. His thoughts come and go, like faint ripples in water, but he is not following them. He is just aware of everything, of nothing. And then something begins to change, not suddenly, not with force, just gently. The awareness that has always been his anchor begins to soften. It is still there, but now it is not separate. It is not watching from the outside anymore. It is melting into the experience itself. And for a brief moment, he is not aware of being aware. He is simply here, without name, without distance, without thought. This is the awareness that dissolves awareness. It sounds like a riddle, like a contradiction, like something the mind cannot grasp, because the mind is used to watching, to measuring, to separating the seer from the seen. But this kind of awareness does not stand apart from what it observes. It dissolves into it. Until there is no observer, no observed, only being. We often begin with awareness as a tool. We use it to watch our thoughts, to notice our breath, to bring attention to the body. It is powerful. It gives space. It brings clarity. But even this watching can become a layer, a slight tension between self and world, a quiet effort to remain awake. And at some point, if the silence becomes deep enough, the watcher itself begins to dissolve, not disappear, just soften, merge, fade into the very thing it was watching. And what remains is not awareness looking at life. It is life becoming aware of itself. There is no distance between subject and object, no echo of, I am watching this, only this, pure, undivided, effortless. And this shift is not dramatic. It is not loud. It is like a candle going out in daylight. The flame is gone, but the light remains. We live much of our lives trying to hold on to awareness. We want to stay present, stay grounded, stay conscious, and that is beautiful. But there is a deeper layer beneath all of that, where you no longer need to hold anything, because presence is not something you do. It is what remains when everything else falls away, even the one who watches, even the one who tries to stay aware. This is where the awareness-amnesia paradox begins to quietly collapse. Because now, there is no forgetting or remembering, no returning or leaving. There is just what is, and in that, there is no observer to name it, no one left to ask if this is awareness or sleep. It is beyond both. It is not a state. It is not an experience. It is the space where all states rise and fall, and it cannot be grasped. Because the moment you try to grasp it, the watcher returns. The mind begins labeling again. The separation is back, and that is okay. Because this truth cannot be held, it can only be lived, only glimpsed when you are soft enough to not need to hold anything at all. Imagine a river that flows quietly through a forest. You sit beside it and watch. The water is clear. You see reflections, leaves drifting, light playing on the surface. That is awareness. But then, without thinking, you step in. You walk deeper until you are fully in the water. You are no longer watching. You are no longer thinking about the river. You are the river, moving. Still, here, this does not mean awareness is lost. It just means it is no longer separate. It is no longer looking from the edge. It is the very fabric of the moment. This is difficult to describe, because the mind wants to turn it into an idea, a goal, a technique. But this is not something you reach. It is something you remember when reaching stops, when effort falls away. When you stop trying to be aware and simply allow what is, this kind of awareness is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not say, look how awake I am. It says nothing, because there is no one left to speak, only the movement of life, the sound of a bird, the coolness of air, the stillness behind the eyes. And you are not watching these things. You are not separate from them. You are them. You are the bird's song, the wind's breath, the silence beneath all sound. And it is in these moments that something deep shifts. A memory that was never mental begins to return. A knowing beyond words, that you were never the observer. You were the awareness itself. And even that was not the full truth, because awareness is not yours. It is not inside you. You are inside it, floating, held, dissolved, and you realize you never had awareness. Awareness had you, and it let you go. Just enough for you to feel like a separate self, so you could live, so you could forget, so you could return. And now, that return is not to awareness as an act, but to awareness as everything. You do not need to remember anymore, because there is no forgetting. You do not need to hold presence anymore, because there is no one holding. There is only the unfolding. And that unfolding is not separate from you. It is you, the one you have always been, before thought, before choice, before identity. Just this, raw, real, whole. It may not last. The mind may return, It usually does. You may find yourself watching again, measuring again, trying to stay present. And that is okay, because even the return of effort is held in that same awareness. Even the forgetting is part of the whole. You do not need to stay dissolved. You only need to know that there is something in you that was never separate, and it will always wait for you. It will meet you in the silence behind the breath, in the moment before thought, in the still space that never changes, even when everything else does. That is not awareness you can use. It is awareness that uses you, not to achieve, not to perform, but to live, fully, softly, without edges. So the next time you sit in silence, and the watcher grows tired, let it rest, let it dissolve, and trust that even when you are not watching, life is still awake, still whole, still you, and that's Ithope, you're in peace. Just consider subscribing, because sleep matters. Just then, stress scatters, and nothing else matters, right? Peace out.